Chapter 787. Although the voice was full of anger, it sounded very familiar. Song Qingshu looked back and couldn't help but laugh. It was the yellow-robed woman who had entered fragrant autumn in disguised as a man and then disappeared without a trace. Originally, he was a little worried that fragrant autumn would be full of nobles and experts tonight. He was also worried that she was injured and would get into trouble. In a split second, Song Qingshu was even thinking about who the perverted thief was. He immediately ruled himself out. After all, it wasn't easy for him to decide to be a gentleman. But when he followed the woman's gaze and noticed that his hand was unbuttoning Hua Kuei's chest, he finally reacted. Song Qingshu let out a strange cry as he awkwardly dodged her hateful sword strike. *cent. $P. What a misunderstanding. Song Qingshu smiled and subconsciously wanted to explain, but suddenly remembered that he was in Tang Quobian's appearance, and she didn't know him at all. After the yellow-robed woman forced Song Qingshu back, she didn't have the time to deal with him. She immediately went to check on Hua Kuei's condition. Seeing his blurred eyes and red cheeks, she couldn't help but be angry. "I'll kill you, you perverted thief." Hey. Seeing that she was pouncing on him like a tigress, Song Qingshu hurriedly dodged everywhere. With the help of a narrow space in the room and the obstruction of the tables and stools, he didn't need to expose his martial arts to avoid her attacks. What perverted thief? I obviously haven't even started. Song Qingshu felt very wronged, but after hearing his words, the yellow-robed woman didn't stop. Instead, the killing intent in her eyes grew stronger, and her moves became more ruthless. Besides, I spent 200,000 taels of gold to buy her. So what if I really want to be perverted? You're such an unreasonable woman. Song Qingshu shamelessly took the Chongsheng king's credit as his own, without a trace of shame on his face. You! The yellow-robed woman's almond-shaped eyes widened. Seeing him dodging, she decided not to chase after him. She casually pulled down the gauze curtain on the bed and threw it at him. The gauze curtain seemed to have eyes and immediately wrapped around Song Qingshu's leg. White Python whip technique. This woman is indeed proficient in the 9-in manual. Song Qingshu was absent-minded and was tripped by her. He hurriedly hugged the pillar next to him and resisted the pull from his legs while reminding her, "My bodyguards will be here soon. If you have the ability, don't leave. Wait until they catch you. Tonight, I want to see what it's like to kill 2 birds with 1 stone." The yellow-robed woman almost vomited blood in anger at his words, but his words did remind her. Hearing the shouts of the guards coming from the distant corridor, she understood that she was injured. If she continued to tangle with this bastard, she wouldn't be able to leave even if she wanted to. "Pervert! I'll take your dog life next time." The yellow-robed woman fiercely glared at him and memorized his appearance. After that, she picked up Hua Kuei, who was lying on the bed, and rushed out of the window. Suddenly, there were all kinds of screams coming from outside. This woman looks like an otherworldly fairy, but her attacks are truly ruthless. Song Qingshu watched as her figure disappeared into the distance, and he finally let out a sigh of relief. "Brother Tanqua, are you all right?" Wan Yinliang had just come out of the private room when he heard about the disturbance and hurried over to check on the situation. "Fortunately, Your Highness came in time. Otherwise, my little life would have been lost here today." Song Qingshu pretended to be frightened. Seeing his flustered appearance, Wan Yinliang secretly despised him, but he was extremely polite on the surface. "Someone, quickly bring some tea to calm down. Also, call the owner of Qiuxiang brothel over." How did he do his security work? He didn't even know that an assassin had snuck in. Seeing Wan Yinliang's enthusiasm, Song Qingshu thought to himself, although this Wan Yinliang's character is a bit bad, he really does have some ability. This arrangement is watertight. Not only did he control the situation, but he also made friends everywhere. He was worried about the yellow-robed woman and the 5th princess, so naturally, he didn't want to continue wasting time in Qiuxiang brothel. After exchanging a few words with Wan Yinliang, he said that he was not feeling well and wanted to go home to rest. Wan Yinliang thought that he was so scared that he was sick. He was both disdainful and happy, thinking that if he was so useless, wouldn't it be easier for him to get the song by in the future? So he immediately sent a team of guards to escort him back to the manor. After coming out of Xiaoxiang brothel, Song Qingshu began to wonder where the yellow-robed woman and the others had gone. Due to the recent incidents of assassins, Daxing Manor security was much tighter than usual. She was injured, so it would not be easy for her to leave the city. It was also unlikely that she was hiding in a residential area. Recently, the city guards have been going door to door to check strangers every day. The yellow-robed woman couldn't hide even if she wanted to. Could it be? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat, and his gaze turned to the indistinct imperial palace in the distance. After returning to Tang Kuo's manor and sending away one Yinliang's guards, Song Qingshu turned around and took Xiao Xingwo's clothes and rushed in the direction of the imperial palace. He didn't change immediately because it would be too easy for a eunuch to be discovered by the patrolling soldiers if he wandered outside the imperial palace at night. After sneaking into the imperial palace, Song Qingshu first changed his clothes and mask in a secluded place, then swaggered towards Xiao Xingwo's residence. As expected, she's here. At the door, Song Qingshu heard the breathing of two people. One of them had a long and familiar breath, which was obviously the yellow-robed woman. The other had a messy breath, which was obvious that she didn't know martial arts. She should be the courtesan she had rescued. "Fairy sister, I'm back." Song Qingshu shouted in advance to avoid another sword slash as soon as he entered the door. After opening the door, Song Qingshu felt something pressing against his back. He couldn't help but raise his hand and smile bitterly. Is it necessary to do this every time? The yellow-robed woman took the opportunity to look outside the door. She didn't see anyone following them. After closing the door, she said apologetically, "We're in a dangerous place, so we have to be careful." "I'm sorry." After spending some time together, the two of them had become quite familiar with each other. Otherwise, with the yellow-robed woman's personality, she wouldn't have apologized to a young eunuch. Song Qingshu deliberately asked. His eyes darted around as he searched everywhere for the whereabouts of the courtesan. The yellow-robed woman looked hesitant, but in the end, she still pulled him into the inner room. "I saved someone. Don't tell anyone what you saw today." Song Qingshu patted his chest and promised, "Sister, don't worry. I definitely won't say a word to anyone." After entering the inner room, Song Qingshu immediately saw the courtesan lying on the bed. He couldn't help but secretly praise, "What a beautiful sleeping scene. No wonder so many men were infatuated with her." Even though she looked so haggard, she didn't lose any of her elegance. Song Qingshu noticed that her eyes were much clearer than when they were in Xiaoxiang brothel. She should have regained her consciousness. The yellow-robed woman's martial arts were high, and she was also experienced in Jianghu. That little bit of love poison was naturally not a problem for her. Seeing a young eunuch suddenly appear in the room, the courtesan's expression couldn't help changing. He subconsciously looked at the yellow-robed woman. The yellow-robed woman hurriedly comforted him. "Don't worry, he's one of us." "One of us?" Hua Kuei looked at Song Qingshu suspiciously. However, when he saw Song Qingshu's Jin Kingdom clothing, he couldn't help but think of some past events. His expression immediately became a little ugly. The yellow-robed woman nodded and introduced him to Song Qingshu. "This is a friend of mine. He may stay here for a few days. You don't mind, do you?" "I don't mind, of course I don't mind." "Huh." Song Qingshu revealed a surprised expression. "Sister, are you really a fairy who descended to the world? You're already so beautiful, but a random friend is also so beautiful." The yellow-robed woman laughed involuntarily. "I know you have a sweet mouth. You don't have to change the way you flatter me." "Beautiful? If I could choose, I'd rather not have this appearance." Hua Kuei, who was sitting on the bed, sighed faintly. Song Qingshu almost slapped himself. Women generally like to be praised as beautiful, but this person in front of him was obviously an exception. Based on her experience, if he were to praise her beauty, wouldn't he be deliberately poking at her scars? Let bygones be bygones. From now on, I won't let you suffer anymore. The yellow-robed woman hurriedly sat next to her and gently patted her back to comfort her. Huh, everyone must be hungry. I brought some food. Eat something and you'll feel better. Song Qingshu waved the food box in his hand. He had specially gone to the imperial kitchen to bring it. As he placed the snacks and dishes on the small table beside the bed, Song Qingshu secretly cursed. Humph. I have to hurry up and get information from them. I've had enough of these days of pretending to be stupid every day. While Song Qingshu was busy at the side, Huakui took the opportunity to pull the yellow-robed woman aside and whispered, "Is this person reliable? How do you know him? It's a long story, but he should be reliable. Don't worry," the yellow-robed woman explained in a low voice. Seeing the yellow-robed woman's firm tone, Huakui couldn't help but nod, agreeing with her judgment. At this time, a breeze blew in from outside the window. She suddenly wrinkled her nose and looked at Song Qingshu in confusion. "Little eunuch, come here." Huakui suddenly waved to Song Qingshu. The yellow-robed woman on the side couldn't help but look at her in confusion. "Beautiful sister, what's the matter?" Song Qingshu was also confused, but he still trotted over. He wailed in his heart. "An hour ago, this woman was still serving me respectfully. I didn't expect that in such a short time, it would be my turn to be respectful in front of her. The wheel of fortune really turns." When Song Qingshu approached, Huakui's face changed slightly, but she quickly concealed it. She asked with a smile, "What's your name?" "This little one is called Xiao Xinghua," Song Qingshu replied. Huakui asked him a few more questions casually. Although Song Qingshu was puzzled, he still answered them one by one. Finally, Huakui suddenly said, "Xiao Xingzi, sister is a little thirsty. Can you pour a glass of water for sister?" "Oh, okay." Song Qingshu felt that she suddenly became a little strange, but he couldn't tell what was strange. He had to go out and pour water for her in confusion. Chapter 788. Woo Woo. The yellow-robed girl's eyes widened and her mind went blank. She had thought of many possibilities, but she never expected this kind of situation. It must be known that her martial arts were high, and she had a high status. No matter where she went, people would treat her like a fairy. Many people didn't even have the courage to look her in the eye, not to mention offending her like Song Qingshu. "What are you doing?" The yellow-robed girl pushed Song Qingshu away with great difficulty, her face completely red. "Previously, I was always at your beck and call, being bullied by you. I have to find something to make it up to you." Song Qingshu laid down beside her, staring at her with a pleased smile. "Ah, your mood is much better now. Why don't you go and die?" The yellow-robed girl went crazy. Her slender fingers suddenly shot towards his body. It was a 9-inch white bone claw that shook the martial arts world. Unfortunately, Song Qingshu was very familiar with this set of martial arts. He easily blocked it with one hand and said, "If you don't stop, I'm going to kiss you again." "Shameless." The yellow-robed girl angrily scolded, but she was clearly frightened. She immediately gave up on her attack and retreated to the corner of the bed, looking at him cautiously. "Ingluo, you two, just what is your relationship?" The entire situation changed too quickly, causing Huakui to be dumbstruck. "We have nothing to do with each other." The yellow-robed girl used her sleeve to wipe her lips. It was obvious that she was extremely angry. Song Qingshu looked at her in disbelief. "Aren't you being too cruel by saying that? We've lived under the same roof for so long. How can we do that?" Huakui was even more shocked. He looked at the yellow-robed girl with a gaze filled with suspicion. What do you mean by that?" The yellow-robed girl almost fainted from anger. "What do you mean by that?" Song Qingshu shrugged his shoulders. "It's that. Do you really want me to say it?" "Speak." The yellow-robed woman could hear her teeth chattering. "If that's the case, don't blame me later." Song Qingshu deliberately cleared his throat. "Didn't you pull me onto the bed that day and ask me to take off your clothes for you? I didn't want to, but you begged me over and over again. I had no choice but to take off your clothes. You bastard. I thought you were a eunuch that day. And I did it for..." Before the yellow-robed woman could finish, Song Qingshu interrupted. "Didn't I say it was inconvenient?" "You did say that, but..." The yellow-clothed woman wanted to explain, but Song Qingshu interrupted. "Since you admit it, then let me ask you again. Did you take the initiative to let me take off your clothes?" Yes, I was thinking. Song Shu didn't give her a chance to speak. That's it. This one is Song Shu, greets fifth sister. Ah, not to mention Hua Koe. Even the yellow-robed woman was dumbfounded. For a moment, she even forgot to get angry. What did you call me? Hua Koe looked at him in disbelief. You're Yingluo's fifth sister, so of course you're my fifth sister. Song Shu nodded his head matter-of-factly. It's our first time meeting, so I didn't bring any gifts. The 200,000 taels of gold from before will be enough to redeem your freedom. Hua Koe had a strange expression on his face. The 200,000 taels of gold wasn't even from you. This man was really shameless. I'm going to kill you. The yellow-robed woman never thought that she, who was always calm and collected, would have such a crazy side to her. Right now, she just wanted to chop this bastard into pieces. Stop! Seeing the yellow-robed woman charge over with her sword, Song Shu quickly said, You're injured right now, so you're no match for me. Of course, even if you weren't injured, you wouldn't be able to defeat me. Don't look at me like that. If you're not happy, you can ignore what I said. The yellow-robed woman acted as if she didn't hear what he said. Her face darkened as she continued to raise her sword and slash. Song Shu dodged a few times before finally getting angry. Do you still want to save your sisters in the laundry yard? This sentence had an effect. The yellow-robed woman stopped and stared at him. What did you just say? You clearly heard it, but you want me to repeat myself. Song Shu rolled his eyes. I'm asking if you still want to save your sisters in the laundry yard. You know my identity? The yellow-robed woman's expression instantly turned ugly. You just kept calling me fifth sister. If I still didn't know, then I'd be an idiot. Song Shu swaggered to sit by the bed, indicating to Hua Koe not to be afraid. He then turned to the yellow-robed woman. Now, should I call you Miss Yang or Miss Zhao? My surname used to be Zhao, but now my surname is Yang. You can call me whatever you want. The yellow-robed woman sat by Hua Koe's side. At this time, she had slowly calmed down. Zhao, Yingluo, N. This name sounds much better than your fifth sister's fortune. Fifth sister, I didn't mean to offend you. Please don't take it to heart. Hua Koe replied to Song Shu by rolling his eyes. He smiled and continued to turn to the yellow-robed woman. What rank are you among the sisters? Why should I tell you? The yellow-robed woman snorted in annoyance. Because I can help you save those sisters of yours. Song Shu smiled casually. Actually, he had many softer methods to increase the favorability of the yellow-robed woman and her sister. But he didn't know if it was because he was too uncomfortable pretending to be a little eunuch or something else. Once he recovered his original identity, he no longer wanted to lower his voice to curry favor with the other. After all, he was now an independent ruler with tens of thousands of elite soldiers under his command. At the same time, his martial arts were outstanding, and he had many female friends by his side. His mentality was slowly changing. To make him like Duan Yu and Wang Yuyin, Song Shu really couldn't do it. Now, his actions were more casual, and he didn't have any intention of deliberately pursuing the yellow-robed woman. Everything he said and did was purely out of interest. Of course, Song Shu was an idiot. Although he had been deliberately provoking the yellow-robed woman, it was because he knew that he could provide her with what she needed, so she definitely wouldn't really turn against him in the end. The yellow-robed woman broke into the palace several times by herself, and even took a great risk to kidnap the empress. Previously, Song Shu didn't understand her purpose, but today, after seeing Zhao Fujin, everything became clear. The yellow-robed woman's purpose was to save the Song dynasty princesses of the laundry yard. Why do you want to help me? Compared to personal honor, the most important thing was whether her sisters could escape the abyss of suffering. The yellow-robed woman quickly calmed down and looked at him with some suspicion. It's a long story. Saving the women of the laundry yard was a difficult task, and it was impossible to do it alone. Song Shu knew that if he didn't be honest with her, it would be difficult for them to cooperate without reservation. So he told the two women about how he came to the Jin Kingdom to save Song Yuanxiao and the others, and how he was about to succeed, and how Song Yuanxiao and the three princesses had such an incident. Hearing what happened to the three sisters and Song Yuanxiao, Zhao Fujin was sad, but the yellow-robed woman was furious. Your Wu-Tang sect is full of such shameless people. Chapter 789. Hey, hey, hey. You can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. Song Qingshu's face was gloomy. Father and the rest have always been focused on cultivation. Do you think they wanted to do such a thing? It was all because the Jin people were despicable and shameless. They drugged them and the three princesses with the yin-yang harmony powder. From another point of view, my father and the rest also saved the three princesses' lives. Otherwise, the three princesses would have died from the fire of passion. Are you satisfied? You're twisting words and forcing logic. The yellow-robed woman was so angry that her whole body was trembling. Luo, if you think there's a problem with my character, we can discuss it. However, my father, fourth martial uncle, and sixth martial uncle are definitely upright people. Song Qingshu said seriously. At that time, I could have saved them. In the end, they used their own lives to threaten me to save your sisters. At the same time, they were afraid of alerting the enemy, so they voluntarily returned to the cage. Don't call me Luo. The yellow-robed woman snorted coldly, but her expression finally eased. If you don't want to, then don't. Song Qingshu suddenly sighed. AI. Actually, the one who suffered the most in this matter is me. The yellow-robed woman and Zhao Fujin looked at each other. What did you suffer? Think about it. In one night, I gained a few stepmothers, causing me to lose a generation in front of you. Isn't that enough? Song Qingshu spread his hands. You really are a bastard. The yellow-robed woman could not help but be angry. On the contrary, Zhao Fujin had more experience and was more open-minded than her. As he comforted the yellow-robed woman, he turned his head and smiled sweetly at Song Qingshu. It seems that you called me fifth sister wrongly. What wrongly? Song Qingshu did not react for a moment. My sisters have become your stepmothers, so shouldn't you call me Aunt Wu? Zhao Fujin's eyes were full of mischief. He pushed the yellow-robed woman in front of him. And this is your 19th aunt. Song Qingshu was instantly dumbfounded. Wasn't he lifting a rock to smash his own foot? The yellow-robed woman was also very embarrassed. She shook Zhao Fujin's arm and pouted. Fifth sister, what nonsense are you talking about? Zhao Fujin gave a faint sigh. Luo, the rest of us aren't as lucky as you. Other than your younger sisters, the rest of us have long been tainted. Even if you save us with our past, which man would dare to want us? I have heard of the reputation of the 7 heroes of Wudang. If they're willing to take responsibility, it would be a good home for my 3 poor sisters. Fifth sister, the yellow-robed woman's eyes immediately reddened. I know that you have suffered, but you are the princesses of the Song dynasty. Do you want your 3 elder sisters to marry a few people of the Jianghu? This bastard's father and that Yin Lighting are already married. Zhang Songshi, on the other hand, is all alone. However, hearing this, Song Qingshu finally couldn't help but say, can I interrupt you for a moment? About the marriage between your 3 sisters and my father, can you wait until after we rescue them and ask for their opinions? It's too much to think about this now. Prince Song's words make sense. It is indeed our fault for not thinking things through. Zhao Fujin looked at the handsome young man in front of him, and then thought of the scene where the 2 of them intertwined in the autumn fragrance house, and his heartbeat suddenly sped up uncontrollably. Song Qingshu sat a little closer to the 2 girls and deliberately bumped the yellow-gowned girl with his shoulder. You sit between the sisters. To continue this chapter, please turn the page. 19? 19th sister, tut-tut. It's a pity that your surname isn't gone. Why do I have to be surname gone? The yellow-robed woman looked at her in confusion. It's nothing. Seeing that no one understood his joke, Song Qingshu's interest waned. That's right. Your sisters were all captured and brought to the laundry yard. Why did you? The yellow-robed woman hugged her legs and rested her chin on her knees, as if immersed in a reminiscing expression. That year, I was actually escorted back to the country by the Jeans with my sisters. Later on the way north, my master suddenly appeared. Unfortunately, there were too many Jeans, and many of them were highly skilled. My master was outnumbered, and in the end, he could only save me. Your master? Song Qingshu was startled. Who is your master? You should have heard of my master's name. His surname is Huang, and his given name is Shang. Speaking of her master, the yellow-robed woman's face instantly became filled with pride. Huang Shang? Song Qing-shu was instantly shocked. The author of a 9-yin manual, Huang Shang? No wonder the yellow-robed woman's attainments in the 9-yin manual at such a young age couldn't even compare to Zhuruo. He's not dead yet. Your master is the one who's dead. The yellow-robed woman's face darkened, and her eyes were filled with anger. I was referring to the rumors in Jianghu. The old man has long since passed away. Song Qing-shu hurriedly apologized. The yellow-robed woman's expression softened. Master has not concerned himself with worldly affairs for the past few decades. The only time he returned to Jianghu was to save me. Since then, he has been living in seclusion. The rumors in Jianghu have been spreading, which is why they say that the old man has something. So that's how it is. Song Qing-shu nodded. In his heart, he thought that there were so many hidden old monsters in this world. Before, there was Eunuch Sunflower, and then there was Master Lotus of Ningma Temple. Now, even an old monster like Huang Shang is still alive. Ba, in the future, I must not provoke these tough people. By the way, how do you plan to save them? The yellow-robed woman looked nervously at Song Qing-shu. I first need to know how many princesses there are in the laundry yard and how they are doing. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but smile at Zhao Fujin. That's why I purposely went to get in touch with the 5th princess. I'm not the perverted thief that someone said. The yellow-robed woman snorted. Zhao Fujin's heart sped up at his smile. He thought, what's wrong with me? I've experienced 4 men in my life, and it can be said that I've suffered a lot. Now, facing a young man, I feel like I'm a young girl yearning for love. Hurriedly gathering his emotions, Zhao Fujin smiled and said, let me explain. In the past, father had 34 daughters. 3rd sister, 6th sister, 7th sister, 8th sister, 10th sister, 11th sister, 12th sister, 15th sister, 17th sister, 18th sister, 22nd sister, and youngest sister. 12 of them died young. Now that I think about it, it was their luck. As for the remaining sisters, other than Ying Luo, who was rescued, the other 21 were sent to the laundry yard. In addition, brother also had a daughter, Princess Rojia. Her whereabouts are unknown. Song Qing-shu knew that the brother she mentioned was Song Qinzong, but why did Princess Rojia sound so familiar? It seemed like the Princess Jingnan whom he slept with in the Forbidden City was also called Princess Rojia. However, Princess Jingnan was the daughter of the Qing dynasty's Prince and Yulu, so they shouldn't be the same person. Prince Kong also had 6 daughters. 3 of them died young. The other 3, when the city was breached, there was chaos. 2 of them were captured and taken to the laundry yard. Rumor has it that the youngest daughter is wandering among the commoners, but the odds are against her. Prince Kong? So it's that impotent Emperor Zhao Go. Song Qing-shu spat in disdain. Being searched by the Jin people until he was impotent, unjustly killing Yu Fei, humiliating himself and begging for peace, allowing his wife to be raped by the Jin. No matter which one it was worthy of the disdain of later generations. Because his attention was focused on Zhao Go, Song Qing-shu did not pay attention to the youngest daughter that Zhao Fujin had mentioned. As a result, there were more twists and turns in the future. But this was a story for the future. Let's not talk about it for now. Most of the concubines and matrons that were captured have been taken by the Jin royal family. Now, there are only father's 21 daughters and 2 of Prince Kang's daughters left in the laundry yard, a total of 23 people. Speaking of all this, Zhao Fujin could not help but think of the humiliation of the past. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably. The yellow-robed girl hurriedly held her hand and comforted her softly. 23 people. Song Qing-shu felt a headache. Although he had been mentally prepared, he did not think that the number of people he had to save was more than expected. The difficulty of the entire rescue mission had increased exponentially. There are 2 problems. First, how do we get the 23 princesses? There are only 22 now. Song Qing-shu glanced at Zhao Fujin, who had already been rescued. How to rescue them from the laundry yard is the first problem. After rescuing them, How do we safely send so many people out of Xing Manor? That is the second problem. No matter which one it is very tricky. You don't have to worry about the second problem. I've already bribed the soldiers guarding the city. As long as we can rescue them, I can bring them out of the city. The yellow-robed girl suddenly said. Song Qingshu's brow furrowed. When the time comes, if something happens in the laundry yard, the first reaction of the Jin people will definitely be to order the city gates to be sealed. The soldiers you bribed to help you smuggle things on a normal day are fine. But in a situation like this where martial law is being enforced, how would they dare to let them pass? Besides, even if they manage to sneak out, once the cavalry of the Jin people chase after them, they won't be able to get far. The yellow-robed girl was stunned. Clearly, she had not considered this. However, she was unwilling to show her fear in front of Song Qingshu. She replied coldly, You don't have to worry about this. I know what I'm doing. All right, if you can really solve this problem, the difficulty of the entire mission will be reduced by more than half. As for how to rescue your sisters from the laundry yard, do you have any plans? Song Qingshu asked. My original plan was to kidnap the Jin Empress and use her as a hostage to force the Jin people to release my pitiful sisters. However, who knew that King Wei would ruin my plans halfway? As she spoke, the yellow-robed girl suddenly froze. She looked at Song Qingshu with a strange expression. So the expert who secretly helped me in the Hall of Peaceful Harmony was you. Now that you know that I have been silently protecting you, do you feel especially touched? Do you have the urge to repay me with your body? Song Qingshu looked at her with a smile. Repay my ass. The yellow-robed girl flew into a rage out of humiliation. She wanted to pull out her sword and stab him again. Zhao Fujin hurriedly pressed her hand down and turned around to look at Song Qingshu. Prince Song, why do you always purposely make Yingluo angry? She's always expressionless and cold. I just want her to have a bit more of an aura. Song Qingshu's reply caused the yellow-robed girl to be momentarily stunned. Looking at his sister, who had a complicated expression on her face, Zhao Fujin sighed in his heart. He then continued, Actually, there's still another huge problem. In order to control us, the Jin people have always been feeding us the wandering powder. Chapter 790. Free and unfettered powder. Song Qingshu was startled. 3 smiles free and unfettered powder? But he quickly denied this guess. If they had really been poisoned by Ding Chuanqiu's 3 smiles free and unfettered powder, not many of the princesses in the Huani brothel would still be alive. 3 smiles free and unfettered powder? Zhao Fujin shook his head blankly. I don't think I've heard of it. Fifth sister, don't mind him, just talk about how you were poisoned. The yellow-robed girl shook Zhao Fujin's arm lightly, her tone filled with dissatisfaction towards Song Qingshu. She often traveled the martial world, so of course she knew about the constellation of mortals' 3 smiles free and unfettered powder. But the unfettered powder that her sister was talking about was clearly not the same thing. Zhao Fujin nodded, then looked towards Song Qingshu. Prince Song, didn't you ask us why we didn't commit suicide after suffering so much humiliation at Xiaoxiang brothel / Xianshi dollar? Star. What? The yellow-robed girl exploded when she heard this, glaring angrily at Song Qingshu. How can you be like this? Not only do you not have any sympathy, but you're also so vicious. Song Qingshu had an awkward expression. I was just asking casually at the time. Zhao Fujin hurriedly pulled his sister back. You can't blame him. Everyone has this kind of question. Actually, it's not that we don't want to commit suicide. It's that we can't. Can't commit suicide? Now, even the yellow-robed girl was curious. Do you still remember Imperial's sister-in-law? Zhao Fujin looked at the yellow-robed girl, the rims of his eyes involuntarily turning red. Imperial's sister-in-law? The yellow-robed girl had a look of reminiscence. I seem to remember that when I was very young, she seemed to have hugged me. She was a very beautiful and gentle woman. Song Qingshu listened silently. When the 2 girls mentioned Imperial's sister-in-law, he was stunned for a while before he realized that they were talking about Song Qinzong's wife, Empress Renhui. During the rebellion of Jinkong, The Jin soldiers captured the city of Bianjing and captured my father, my brother, and the two empresses. In addition to the womenfolk, members of the royal family, and ministers, more than 3,000 people returned to the north. It was the 4th month of the lunar calendar at that time, and the weather in the north was still very cold. We women's clothes were very thin, and we often couldn't sleep due to the cold at night. We could only find firewood and straw to keep ourselves warm. The Jin soldiers often took advantage of us. At that time, my sister-in-law was 26 years old, the most beautiful age for a woman. Although imperial sister-in-law was usually very gentle, she was very unyielding. She never let the Jin take advantage of her. Coupled with her special identity, the Jin generals later specially ordered their subordinates not to bully her. Later, when we arrived at Daxing Prefecture, the Jin held a captive ceremony. They ordered father, brother, their concubines, and members of the royal family to wear the clothes worn by the Jin people. They wrapped their heads in handkerchiefs, put on sheep fur coats, and bare their upper bodies. They went to the temple of Aguda, the great ancestor of the Jin kingdom, and then ordered the Empress Dowager and Empress to bathe in the Jin palace. Bathe sounded nice, but it was just to cover up the Jin Emperor's filthy behavior. Imperial sister-in-law knew that she could escape the humiliation of ordinary soldiers, but she could not escape the Jin Emperor's visit. She did not want to be humiliated, so she drowned herself on the way to the palace. It was the one who cherished purity and walked chastity, the Lady of Chastity of Jinkong County, who was sober among drunken people and unyielding chastity. Song Qingshu had been in and out of the palace many times. He once saw a stone tablet beside a pool with these 4 lines inscribed with the Jin Emperor's seal. At that time, he was wondering who this Lady of Chastity of Jinkong County was, that the Jin Emperor would personally erect a stone tablet. Now that he heard her words, he immediately understood. Yes, it was Imperial sister-in-law. Zhao Fujin wiped his tears and continued. The name of Lady of Chastity was just a crocodile's tears. Later, a few people tried to imitate Imperial sister-in-law, but they failed and were saved by the Jin people. Then, those unscrupulous people cut them into pieces in front of all of us. Seeing them wailing in pain, with blood all over their bodies, we were angry and terrified. We were afraid that we would end up like them if we failed to commit suicide. The Jin people were still worried, so they gave us a strange medicine called rambling powder. After taking this medicine, we felt like we were on cloud 9, as if we had ascended to heaven. At that time, we were on the verge of despair, and this little bit of happiness was enough for us to indulge ourselves. The yellow-robed woman frowned and couldn't help but interrupt her. "Fifth sister, from what you've said, this rambling powder seems to be quite beneficial to you. It's not that simple." Zhao Fujin laughed bitterly. After taking this medicine, we did feel like we were on cloud 9, but the most important thing about this medicine is that it has to be taken at regular intervals. If we don't take this medicine after the prescribed time, we will feel as if we have fallen into hell. No one can endure that kind of feeling. As if recalling that demonic memory, Zhao Fujin's entire body trembled uncontrollably. Song Qingshu, who was standing at the side, immediately understood what she meant by the unfettered powder. Its effects were similar to the Raven heroine in his previous life. No wonder the Jin people could completely control the women in the laundry yard. It turned out that they had used this method, not to mention these noble women who had lived like princes. Countless strong-willed heroes in his previous life would become limp shrimps with tears and snot flowing down their faces if they were to come into contact with this drug. The power of this drug was not something that a human's willpower could resist. This is troublesome. To a certain extent, there is no antidote for this drug. Song Qingshu frowned. He didn't tell the 2 women what he was thinking, lest they fall into despair. Even if we save them, as long as there is no rambling powder, I'm afraid they will cry and beg to return to the laundry yard. Song Qingshu's mood instantly became agitated. In that case, the first thing we need to do is to obtain the antidote for the rambling powder. Fifth sister, do you know where we can obtain the antidote for the rambling powder? The yellow-robed woman hurriedly asked. Zhao Fujin had a blank expression. I don't think I've heard the Gene people mention anything about the antidote in these past few years. The yellow-robed woman had just heard her sister talk about the pitiful experience of those people. Her mind was in a mess, and it was difficult for her to think like usual. She subconsciously turned to Song Qing-shu. Hey, do you have any ideas? Song Qing-shu came back to his senses just in time to see her miserable expression. He didn't have the heart to tell her the truth and make her feel even worse, so he nodded. I know what the antidote for the rambling powder is. Leave this matter to me. What was the antidote for the rambling powder? Of course, it was the rambling powder itself. At this moment, Song Qing-shu had already thought about it. In order to save these poor women, even if it meant quenching their thirst with poison, they could only try temporarily. After rescuing them, he would entrust the Poison Hand King of Medicine and Cheng Ling-su to help him analyze the components of the rambling powder to see if they could find a way to cure them. The only thing he could do was to trust them. After all, this was a wonderful world. There were all kinds of magical martial arts and countless experts who could leap onto roofs and vault over walls. These things were unimaginable in his previous world. Therefore, the poison that had no antidote in his previous world might not be unsolvable in this world. People in the world say that as long as the Golden Snake King wants to do it, there is nothing he can't do. The yellow-robed woman felt the solemnity in Song Qing-shu's eyes, and her tone also became relaxed. Since you've asked, I'm willing to believe you. Zhao Fujin's eyes showed surprise. I didn't expect Prince Song to be so powerful at such a young age. This is just a rumor. You don't have to take it too seriously, fifth princess. Song Qing-shu smiled slightly. If I really can do anything I want like the rumors say, then I want to kiss your sister again. You see if she will agree. The yellow-robed woman seemed to be a little numb to his nonsense. This time, not only did she not get angry, but she smiled sweetly. If you can really save my poor sisters, you can kiss them however you want. Really? Song Qing-shu immediately asked. The yellow-robed woman's face turned slightly red. We'll talk about it after you save them. Then I have to hurry. Song Qing-shu suddenly looked shocked. Zhao Fujin looked at his sister and then looked at Song Qing-shu. Suddenly, there was a surge of discomfort in his heart. They were both princesses, and they were both beautiful. Why was his sister like a fairy pursued by man, while he could only be a withered willow in the eyes of men? If the person who was saved back then was me, I would still be a noble princess, and at the same time, I would also be a fairy in the eyes of men. Do you have any plans now? The yellow-robed woman did not notice the change in her sister's expression. She was most concerned about how to successfully save her sisters. Zhao Fujin suddenly came to his senses. What was wrong with him? His sister took such a big risk to save everyone. How could he have such an idea? Song Qing-shu shook his head. I have a few immature ideas now. I need a few days to think about them. I will tell you when I have thought about it. The yellow-robed woman snorted. In my opinion, the easiest way is to kidnap the Jin Kingdom's empress. If you and I cooperate, it will be a piece of cake to kidnap her. That won't work. Song Qing-shu subconsciously rejected it. Why not? The yellow-robed woman snorted coldly. I'm afraid that someone has been deeply favored by the empress recently and is reluctant to do anything to her. I say, Miss Yang, you clearly have an otherworldly appearance, but why is your mind filled with such filthy things? Song Qing-shu was speechless. What kind of relationship do you think I have with the empress? Being exposed, the yellow-robed woman was a little embarrassed. She stubbornly replied, a man and a woman alone in a room. What kind of relationship can we have? Come on, in her eyes, I am just a eunuch, okay? Song Qing-shu looked gloomy. If you really want to say that when a man and a woman are alone in a room, aren't we the ones who get along better? Do you think we are in that kind of relationship? Of course we are different, the yellow-robed woman hurriedly said. We are both a man and a woman alone. What difference can there be? Song Qing-shu quietly added, besides, I've never taken off the empress's clothes. Don't mention that thing again. The yellow-robed woman was angry and anxious, thinking of the time when she thought that he was a eunuch and asked him to remove the arrowhead from her back. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. Chapter 791. Hearing the eunuch's voice, the yellow-robed woman hurriedly hugged Zhao Fujin and shrank into the bed, worried that the eunuch would break in. Song Qingshu reached out and put down the bed curtain. He put on the Zyok Singwol mask again and went out to open the door. You again? When Song Qingshu saw that the two people at the door were the two little eunuchs who came to him last time, he couldn't help but be happy. Previously, the yellow-robed woman made a mess in the hall of Taiha, and Prince Wei took the opportunity to kill many of the Empress's subordinates. These two brothers survived until now, which showed that they were very lucky. Oh, Eunuch Xing, you're still in the mood to laugh. You haven't paid respects to Her Majesty for a long time. Her Majesty has said that if we can't find you today, we will go with you to pour the night incense. The two little eunuchs suddenly became anxious and reached out to pull Song Qingshu out. Please wait a moment, eunuchs. I'll go back to get something first. Pound. Square root. / After saying that, Song Qingshu closed the door without waiting for them to refuse. Then he hurriedly returned to the room and said to the two women, Now the Empress has summoned me. I'll go there to deal with it first and see if I can take the opportunity to find out information about the Xiaoya powder. You two be careful here. You be careful. The yellow-robed woman hesitated and whispered. Hey, did the sun rise from the west? Song Qingshu asked curiously. Humph, you're now related to whether my sisters can get out of the abyss of suffering. What's wrong with me caring about you? The yellow-robed woman said angrily. Don't worry, it's a piece of cake for me to deal with these situations. Wait, speaking of this, I remember that I have to change my clothes. With the lesson of being seen through by Zhao Fujin, Song Qingshu really didn't dare to wear his current clothes to see Empress Pei Man God knew if she would smell anything. After all, in addition to Zhao Fujin, he also had the fragrance of the yellow-robed woman. Song Qingshu didn't avoid it. He directly took off his clothes in front of the two women, revealing his well-proportioned and full muscles. Because of the nourishment of genuine qi, his skin seemed to have a layer of crystal luster. What are you doing? The embarrassed and angry voice of the yellow-robed woman came into his ears. Song Qingshu blankly turned his head and found that the two women on the bed were blushing and had turned their heads away. I'm changing. I don't want to have your fragrance on me and be seen through by the Empress later. Song Qingshu noticed the two women's embarrassment and couldn't help but laugh. Do you have to be like this? I don't even mind when I'm naked, but you guys are shy? Scram. What he got in response was a pillow that contained its owner's anger. Ha ha ha. Song Qingshu let out a long laugh, then turned and left. Through the gap in the window, she saw Song Qingshu and the two eunuchs disappear into the distance. The yellow-robed woman returned to the bedside and said to Zhao Fujin, Fifth sister, usually no one comes here. You hide here for a while. I'll be back soon. Zhao Fujin saw the eagerness in her eyes and couldn't help but be stunned. You want to follow Prince Song? Yes. The yellow-robed woman nodded. I always feel that he and the Jin Kingdom Empress are not so simple. A dignified empress often looks for a little eunuch in the middle of the night. There must be some unspeakable secret. Zhao Fujin looked hesitant. I think Prince Song is a good person. He won't do anything bad to us. My good fifth sister, how long has it been? Why are you speaking for that person? Could it be that in Xiuxiang House you... The yellow-robed woman pulled Zhao Fujin's arm and deliberately teased. Zhao Fujin stretched out a finger and pointed hard at her forehead. No wonder Prince Song is talking about you. What's in your little head? I'm worried that you'll ruin Prince Song's plan. Don't worry, fifth sister. I'll just follow them from a distance. I won't disturb them. The yellow-robed woman was afraid that she would refuse and hurriedly ran out. As she ran, she said, Be careful, fifth sister. I'll be back soon. Seeing his sister disappear out of the door in an instant, Zhao Fujin couldn't help but shake his head. At the same time, he sighed inwardly. If only I had the ability to come and go like this. Song Qingshu followed the two little eunuchs and turned left and right, avoiding most of the guards outside the Hall of Peaceful Harmony. However, the guards were very strict. In the end, they still had to meet the guards. However, Song Qingshu didn't expect that when the guards saw the three of them, it was as if they saw air. They didn't even ask anything before letting them pass. This woman Pei Man is indeed capable. Song Qingshu sighed inwardly. He originally thought that after the previous incident, Wei Wang had completely controlled the guards of the Hall of Peaceful Harmony. He didn't expect that Pei Man would be able to instigate some of them so quickly. Although it wasn't a lot, it was enough to make all of Wei Wang's plans go to waste. After entering the Hall of Peaceful Harmony, the two little eunuchs consciously retreated. Song Qingshu walked in with familiarity and soon heard Empress Pei Man's languid voice. "Little Xing, what did I say to you last time?" "Fine, she's here to denounce me." Song Qingshu's heart was as bright as snow, but he deliberately pretended to be wronged. "This lowly one remembers your highness's teachings and secretly came here 3 days later. Who knew that the Hall of Peaceful Harmony was surrounded by unfamiliar guards? I saw that I didn't recognize those guards and was worried that they would question me and ruin your highness's plan. Thus, I didn't dare to come in." "Umph. If it weren't for the fact that something had indeed happened in the Hall of Peaceful Harmony and you, a servant, dared to break the appointment, this empress would have long sent someone to chop off your head." Empress Pei Man's voice was full of anger. Song Qingshu frowned deeply. Previously, when he heard Zhao Fujin talk about the tragic fate of the women who had been captured in the Song Kingdom, he was already burning with anger at the cruelty of the Jin people. Now that the Empress of the Jin kept calling him a servant, he felt that he was about to lose control of his emotions. "However, you're quite clever. If you foolishly ran into the hands of those guards, it would really be troublesome for this empress." Empress Pei Man giggled and waved at him. "Come sit beside this empress. Seeing that you're so clever, this empress will reward you with a bunch of grapes." Song Qingshu's face was gloomy. Perhaps in this world, grapes were a rarity for ordinary servants. But in his previous world, what kind of fruit had an ordinary citizen not eaten? Dragon fruit, durian, cherry, blackcurrant, mangosteen. Any one of the fruits that could be found everywhere in a fruit shop could probably blind one's dog eyes. Of course, if it's the 2 grapes on your chest, then it's still worth something. Song Qingshu cursed inwardly, but he had to imitate Xiao Xinghua and pretend to be flattered. "How's the practice of those things that I asked you to do?" Empress Pei Man was wearing a loose silk robe and casually lying on her side on the bed. She asked as she sucked the grape juice in her hand. "I can't be any more familiar." Sitting on the Empress couch and looking at the large patch of snow-white skin exposed under the silk robe, Song Qingshu smiled bitterly. She really didn't see him as a man. Chapter 792. Song Qing was dumbfounded for a moment. What was going on? "Look at how nervous you are." Seeing Song Qing acting like a dumb goose, Empress Pei Man was amused to the point of giggling, and her body trembled. She didn't explain and instead yawned. Her left hand lightly pressed against her red lips, and she seemed extremely delicate as she casually laid down on the couch. "Little Xing, how is Ben Gong treating you?" This kind of question was simply a free question. Song Qing didn't even think before replying. Her Majesty's great kindness to this little one, even if this little one has to climb a mountain of swords or go through a sea of fire, he still can't repay it. As soon as the words left his mouth, he secretly cursed. This empress being so good to a little eunuch, it was obvious that she had an ulterior motive. He could only blame himself for being too arrogant. Usually, he said these words too easily. This time, he just happened to bump into the muzzle of a gun. Hearing his answer, Empress Pei Man was very satisfied. "At least you have a conscience. Don't worry, Ben Gong doesn't need you to climb a mountain of swords or go through a sea of fire. As long as you help me do one thing, Ben Gong will be satisfied. Please tell me, Her Majesty." Song Qing braced himself and said. He had already thought about it. He wasn't that stupid to really help the other do anything. However, this Empress Pei Man was obviously playing with a big conspiracy. It was good to find out more information. After he found out what Empress Pei Man wanted to do, it would be time to escape. Who knew that Empress Pei Man didn't give him any specific instructions? Instead, she said with a smile, "This matter isn't that easy to do. Ben Gong is afraid that you don't have the courage." Song Qing's heart trembled. This woman was indeed scheming something big. Of course, he still maintained his loyal and devoted appearance on the surface. Even after hearing her provocation, he deliberately pretended to be despised and hurt. Little Xing, everything you have now is given by Nyang Yang. If Nyang Yang tells me to go east, I definitely won't dare to go west. Little Xing's courage was small before, but her majesty is my courage now. Little Xing isn't afraid of anything. What nonsense are you saying? What do you mean I'm your courage? Empress Peiman couldn't help but scold with a smile, but she wasn't really angry. In the end, whether you have the courage or not, it's useless to say it. It's better to prove it. How can I prove it? Song Qing was in a bit of a dilemma. If the other party wanted him to assassinate someone, how could he fool them? Touch me. Empress Peiman's voice was filled with a bone-chilling intent. What? Song Qing had always been proud of his profound cultivation, and he could even hear the sound of a mosquito within 100 feet radius. But when he heard Empress Peiman's words, his first reaction was that he must have misheard. Didn't you say that you're brave enough? That's why this consort wants you to touch my body to prove it. Empress Peiman smiled sweetly, but if one paid close attention, they would find that the depths of her watery eyes were a little too deep and calm. Of course, it wasn't that Song Qing didn't dare. She just felt that it was inconceivable. She was a dignified empress. How could she make such a ridiculous request? Of course, he didn't really care about this. If a great beauty took the initiative to let him touch her, he naturally had no reason to refuse. But Song Qing quietly glanced at the faint shadow by the window several dozen feet away and bitterly smiled in his heart. This kind of thing was naturally fine if it was done in private, but it was a different matter if there were people watching. Although his image in that person's heart couldn't be any worse, if he touched a woman just because she asked him to, it would seem a bit too impatient. No matter what, he should at least first push her away before touching her. This woman is truly shameless. The yellow-robed woman who was hiding outside the window couldn't help but spit out, a blush creeping up to her ears. If she encountered such a dirty matter on a normal day, she would have long since floated away, as if staying a moment longer would taint her Tao heart. But today, for some unknown reason, she hesitated and didn't leave. Instead, she continued to look inside. This lady wants to see what that bastard will do. The yellow-robed woman thought of a dignified reason to stay. Seeing that Song Qing had been standing there, Empress Peiman's eyes gradually turned cold. What? Who said just now that she was very bold and was willing to listen to any of my orders? Song Qing glanced at the bed and couldn't help but sigh. Empress Peiman was in her 30s, which was the age of a woman's charm. At this moment, she was casually lying on her side on the bed, showing a graceful figure that young girls couldn't reach. She had rosy lips, towering breasts, soft and elastic waist, plump and sexy buttocks. Every part of her was attractive. What's more, she was the dignified empress of a country. Although Song Qing usually claimed to be obsessed with everything, now he had to admit that compared with some young girls, such a mature and gorgeous woman was more attractive. I've never heard such a request in my life. I'll touch her then. Song Qing made up his mind. As for what the yellow-robed woman outside thought, it was her business. Of course, he was not obsessed with lust. He always remembered the hesitation and timidity of a little eunuch like Xiao Xinghua. So although he walked over, he only gently put his hand on Empress Peiman's shoulder. I'm not asking you to touch here. Empress Peiman was angry and amused. She didn't know how many men in this world wanted to touch her body, but he didn't dare to touch her. It seemed that a eunuch was a eunuch after all. If she didn't need him for something she wanted to do, she would have slapped him to get out. If I don't touch here, where should I touch? Song Qing looked at her blankly. For example, here, and here. Empress Peiman exuded a warm and smooth fingertip and pointed at a few places on her delicate body at random. The yellow-robed woman outside the window blushed and thought, how could there be such a shameless woman in this world? Song Qing was also sweating like a waterfall. I'm afraid this isn't very good. Hearing his words, the yellow-robed woman's expression finally softened a little. It seemed that she had misunderstood him before. Although he was usually a playboy, No matter what, those were still his lovers. In the end, there was nothing wrong with it. What I want you to do requires great courage. You don't even dare to touch me now. How can I believe that you can complete that task? Empress Pei Man said coldly. Since your highness is so kind, then I won't be polite. Song Qing thought that the yellow-robed woman should be able to understand him. He had already refused several times, but he couldn't resist her constant requests. Besides, he was also trying to get information. Chapter 793. Empress Pei Man's heart also skipped a beat. She had originally just wanted to test the other party. She thought that since he was a eunuch, it wouldn't be a big deal to let him touch her. But when the other party's hand actually covered her chest, she didn't know why, but the waves of heat that came from his hand even made her soul palpitate. In order to hide the embarrassment of being touched by a eunuch, Empress Pei Man deliberately snorted coldly. Little Xing, be honest. Have you touched any palace maid like this before? Replying to your ladyship, those palace maids are His Majesty's people in name. Even if this lowly one was given 10,000 times the courage, this lowly one wouldn't have the guts to offend them. Song Qingshu hurriedly tried to clear his name, but he wasn't lying here. He had interacted with many women, but he really didn't seem to have touched a palace maid. Those lowly maids, how can they be His Majesty's people? Umph. Empress Pei Man felt a wave of irritation in her heart, but she quickly calmed down and said with a charming smile, "The one you're touching right now is the authentic Emperor's woman." Song Qingshu laughed mischievously. Isn't this what you let me touch? Although this lowly one doesn't dare to offend His Majesty, I also don't dare to disobey your Majesty's decree. Outside the window, the yellow-robed woman could not bear to watch any longer. She fiercely glared at Song Qingshu's back before turning around and leaving with a red face. At this moment, her mind was in turmoil, and she was almost discovered by the imperial bodyguards. Fortunately, she had been diligently practicing the 9E manual since she was a child, and her Qinggong had already reached the point where she could move as she pleased. Finally, she managed to escape from the Hall of Peaceful Harmony. Sensing that the yellow-robed woman had left, Song Qingshu finally let out a sigh of relief. The third will had finally left. Empress Pei Man was currently reflecting on what Song Qingshu had just said. Doesn't dare to offend His Majesty, nor does he dare to defy my decree. Could it be that this little eunuch is hinting at something? Little Xing was usually smart and quick-witted, so he might have guessed something. Since that's the case, I'll let him know first. Little Xing, do you still remember the etiquette this empress taught you? Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. The real show was coming. Of course I remember. Little Xing practices in the house every day. Empress Pei Man nodded with satisfaction. Then do you know what kind of etiquette that is? Of course, Song Qingshu knew what the etiquette was, but he still looked confused. What etiquette is that? That's an emperor's special etiquette. Empress Pei Man wanted to see the other party's reaction with interest, but she suddenly felt a sharp pain in her chest. She couldn't help but cry out, you're hurting me. Nyang Nyang, please forgive me. It's just that this lowly one was too shocked just now and was a bit nervous. Song Qingshu hurriedly explained, but he was laughing inside. In ancient times, there was Lu Xuanda who deliberately pretended to be frightened by lightning when he was cooking wine with green plums. Today, there was Song Qingshu who deliberately pretended to be frightened on the phoenix couch and fiercely pinched the Empress's soft breasts. Forget it, forget it. Empress Pei Man was in pain, but Song Qingshu's reaction was within her expectations. She couldn't blame him. In reality, the reason this empress trained you like this was so that you could pretend to be the emperor for a day. Seeing the other not react this time, Empress Pei Man asked curiously, "Did you hear what Ben Gong said?" This lowly one understands. Song Qingshu deliberately pretended to be unafraid of death. Everything this lowly one has was bestowed by Nyang Yang. Whatever Nyang Yang tells this lowly one to do, this lowly one will do. You're not afraid of death? Empress Pei Man turned around and laid flat on the couch, her pair of phoenix eyes tightly staring at Song Qingshu's eyes. Afraid? Of course I'm afraid. Song Qingshu sighed. But now, I have any other choice? If I'm willing, I'll die. If I'm not willing, I'll still die. It's better to repay Nyang Nyang's kindness before I die. Also, to be able to have a taste of Emperor before I die. This life is worth it. Empress Pei Man looked in shock at the little eunuch in front of her. At this time, he didn't seem like a lowly eunuch at all. He was clearly a heroic and great man. Unconsciously, a strange feeling rose in her heart. It's good that he's figured it out himself. This saves Ben Gong the trouble of talking. Empress Pei Man thought to herself. However, she still had to do the work of saving face. Little Xing, you don't have to be afraid. If things go smoothly, you actually don't need to die. Really? Song Qingshu deliberately revealed a pleasantly surprised expression, but inside, he was sneering. Your words are more like coaxing that real little Xinghua. Of course it's true. Empress Pei Man replied without a change in expression. To be exact, it's not for you to pretend to be the emperor for a day, but for you to pretend to be the emperor for a night. At that time, no one will know of this matter, so you naturally won't be in any danger. What does Nyang Yang want me to do? Song Qingshu was really curious. What could she do for him to pretend to be the emperor for a night? You don't need to worry about this. When the time comes, Ben Gong will naturally tell you. Empress Pei Man remained tight-lipped. Song Qingshu still wanted to ask, but Empress Pei Man suddenly leaned over. Her slender arm softly rested on his shoulder and wrapped around his neck. She smiled foolishly and said, Little Xing, do you want to experience what it's like to be the emperor in advance? For some reason, looking at this little eunuch who was willing to die for her, Empress Pei Man felt a sense of guilt in her heart. In reality, for someone like her who had been in a high position for a long time, sacrificing 1 or 2 chess pieces for the sake of benefits was an extremely common thing. Normally, she wouldn't even blink. But this little eunuch gave her a different feeling. Perhaps it was his indifferent attitude toward life and death that had moved her, or perhaps it was the heroic spirit that had inexplicably emanated from his body that made it impossible for her to treat him as an ordinary chess piece. How do I experience it in advance? Song Qingshu had thought that tonight's matter had come to an end. Who knew that she would come over again? Empress Pei Man pressed down on his shoulder and had him sit down on the phoenix couch. Then she lifted her skirt and jumped off the bed. Under Song Qingshu's confused gaze, she suddenly smiled at him and then knelt in front of him. This subject's concubine, Pei Man, greets your majesty. May Emperor live 10,000 years. What's going on? Song Qingshu suddenly felt his mind go blank. Perhaps he had been pretending to be little Xinghua for too long. He unconsciously wanted to help her up. Sit properly. Pei Man's phoenix eyes suddenly became murderous. Did you forget what Ben Gong taught you before? Song Qingshu finally reacted. She had been practicing for so long. Since you like to play, then I'll properly play with you. Bold. You dare be rude to Zhen? Slap yourself. Song Qingshu's suddenly dignified voice scared Pei Man. In that instant, she even thought that the one sitting in front of her was the real emperor. She couldn't help feeling overjoyed. Good. Little Xinghua, you performed very well. Finishing, she prepared to stand. Song Qingshu's eyes focused. Did Zhen allow you to rise? Being looked at by his eyes, Empress Pei Man didn't know why, but she felt her hands and feet go soft. She unconsciously knelt back down on the ground. This subject's concubine was confused for a moment. This subject's concubine asked for Emperor's forgiveness. This plot wasn't right. Empress Pei Man finally came back to her senses. He wasn't the real emperor, so why was she this afraid of a little eunuch? Just as she was about to open her mouth to end this farce, who would have thought that when she raised her head, she would see Song Qingshu staring at her? An indescribable pressure spread out, causing her to swallow the words that were about to come out of her mouth. What the hell? How can his aura be so strong? It's even more dignified than a real emperor. Empress Pei Man was secretly shocked. How could she know that the person sitting in front of her was not the little eunuch in her mind, but an emperor who had actually sat in the throne room to attend the morning court? Moreover, Song Qingshu had come out of the battlefield filled with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. so he naturally had a killing intent. It was fine if he hit it normally, but now that it was released without reservation, how could a pampered empress like Payman endure it? Forget it. The more he acts, the better. Since it's like this, it's not a big deal to practice with him. Empress Payman could not understand her own reaction, so she could only subconsciously use this reason to explain her actions. This concubine has been rude. Please forgive me, Emperor. Slap yourself. Song Qingshu picked up the teacup next to him as he calmly said, "This servant is really going against the heavens." Empress Payman's first reaction was to fly into a rage, but when she met Song Qingshu's eyes, her anger immediately dissipated. At the same time, a strange feeling appeared in her heart. She had always been the high and mighty empress. Everyone treated her with respect, and no one had ever dared to use this kind of commanding tone to speak to her. Even Shizong, because of his weak personality, had never dared to treat her like this. Now that she was being ordered around like a servant, she didn't know why, but there was an indescribable sense of excitement in her heart. As you wish. Empress Payman had not expected that she would actually agree to this absurd order. Everything is to make him act more like the emperor. While using this reason to numb herself, Payman raised her hand and slapped it down on her smooth face. Ha! A crisp sound rang out in the room. Too light. Song Qingshu took a sip of tea and said expressionlessly. Empress Payman felt like she was about to explode from anger. She didn't know why, but she unexpectedly slapped herself again. This time, the strength was much greater than the last time, and a red mark soon appeared on her white and tender face. Your Majesty, are you satisfied now? Empress Payman's eyes were watery as she looked at the man sitting in front of her. Song Qingshu almost spat out the tea in his mouth. The reason he had acted like this just now was to take revenge for how he had been forced to bow down to little Xinghua. He thought that for a scheming woman like Payman, even if she was extremely angry, she would still do as she was told. But now that he saw her eyes filled with love, no matter how slow Song Qingshu was, he realized that something was wrong. Chapter 794. Since you're a masochist, if I don't play around with you, how can I make up for the depression I felt when I had to bow and scrape in front of you? Song Qingshu quickly came up with an idea. Your Majesty, are you satisfied now? Empress Payman's eyes were watery as she looked at the man sitting in front of her. Song Qingshu gave a non-committal grunt. We've been standing all day today, and my legs are a bit sore now. Empress, help me massage them. Does this damn eunuch really think he's the emperor? Empress Payman didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, it was rare for her to be in the mood today, so she might as well play with him and see what kind of tricks this damn eunuch could play. Yes, Empress Payman said in a sweet voice. Perhaps it was because of the previous lesson, but she didn't stand up this time. Instead, she kneeled on the ground and moved her knee to the side of Song Qingshu's leg. Even though it wasn't too far away, she, who had always lived like a princess, quickly felt a burning sensation on her knee. However, this slight pain didn't make her feel uncomfortable. It almost made her moan. Fortunately, she had been educated since she was a child, so she quickly controlled this impulse. However, her face was still a bit red from holding it in. Looking down from above, Song Qingshu happened to see through her collar that a large area of her exposed smooth white skin gradually exuded a delicate red. He couldn't help but secretly click his tongue. She's moved by this. Your Majesty, is it comfortable? Empress Payman knelt by Song Qingshu's feet and began to massage his leg. Because the large robe was a bit of a hindrance, she had rolled up her sleeves, revealing a small part of her snow-white arm. Not bad. Song Qingshu swept his eyes over her and couldn't help sighing inwardly. This woman lived like a princess in the palace every day, raising herself to be really white and tender. Payman's skin was so delicate that many young girls couldn't compare to it. Her skin was as delicate and smooth as milk. It was as if one could feel the soul-stirring softness just by looking at it. Although Payman could not be considered a stunning beauty, she had a rosy face, thin eyebrows, wide forehead, and white skin. She had a natural charm about her. She was definitely a man's gift. When he thought about how Jin Shizong had left such a woman in the harem, Song Qing-shu could not help but doubt whether he was a man or not. Previously, in Autumn Fragrance Brothel, when he hugged the yellow-clothed girl's older sister, Song Qing-shu's lower abdomen had long since accumulated in nefarious fire. Now that he was stimulated by Empress Pei Man like this, Song Qing-shu suddenly felt somewhat unable to control himself. Empress Pei Man was next to him and quickly felt the heat coming from his body. Her eyebrows twitched. It's really strange. Didn't I hear that eunuchs always have a smell of urine that can't be washed away? Why is it that his body doesn't smell bad? Instead, it faintly has a very comfortable aura? Even if Pei Man thought about it, she would never have thought that there would be a fake eunuch in the harem. The doubt in her heart flashed and was quickly thrown to the back of her mind. Because of the attractive aura coming from Song Qing-shu, Pei Man felt that her current role was not that hard to accept. She used all of her skills to massage him, putting in even more effort than when she was a young girl, trying to make the Empress Dowager happy. Emperor, this concubine will help you massage your shoulders. After receiving permission from Song Qing-shu, Empress Pei Man happily climbed onto the bed. As she pressed her body against Song Qing-shu's back, she gently massaged his shoulders. Emperor, is it comfortable? Even if Pei Man was wearing a loose robe, her chest would still be swollen and trembling, attracting a lot of attention. Now that she was only wearing a thin silk robe and was pressed tightly against Song Qing-shu's back, that heavy pressure made Song Qing-shu's mind unconsciously draw out that plump figure, making his mouth go dry. It wasn't just Song Qing-shu. Even Empress Pei Man found it hard to control herself. She hadn't felt it before, but now that she was in such close contact, Song Qing-shu didn't have any of the softness that other eunuchs had. His body was covered in firm muscles, and his broad and thick back made her feel a bit dazed, as if she was serving a strong man. Empress Pei Man's face rested against Song Qing-shu's shoulder. The other's warm breath landed on her face, and goosebumps rose all over her body. Looking at that Adam's apple moving up and down in front of her, she unexpectedly kissed him. Hugging Pei Man's soft and fragrant body, he could feel the warmth and elasticity of her body through two thin layers of cloth. Song Qing-shu felt a burst of anger in his heart. If you keep seducing me like this, worst comes to worst, this father will take the risk of my identity being exposed and take you down on the spot. However, there was still a trace of clarity in his mind. For a moment of pleasure, if he caused Song Yuan Xiao and the others to be unable to save those Song dynasty princesses, that would be a great sin. What do you want to do? Song Qing-shu knew that he couldn't continue and reached out to push her away. However, Pei Man happened to twist her body, causing him to accidentally press down on her chest. That astonishing elasticity and feeling made Song Qing-shu fall into a daze. At this time, Pei Man's cheeks were flushed red and her hair was disheveled. She foolishly giggled in his ear and said, "This minister's concubine is preparing to serve your majesty in bed, asking your majesty to bestow me with rain and dew." Song Qing-shu secretly clicked his tongue, thinking that there was something wrong with this woman. He was still a eunuch in name, but she really was addicted to playing? In reality, Pei Man was also very conflicted. This person was clearly a eunuch, but she didn't know why she would feel so passionate when she was with him. In addition, the other didn't have that kind of smell that she disliked, so she might as well pretend to be a phoenix and do it with him. Even if the other was a eunuch, at least he was a strong eunuch that could move her heart. Before Song Qing-shu could react, he was pushed onto the bed by her. This minister's concubine will help the emperor change clothes. After Empress Pei Man finished speaking, she used her teeth to bite a corner of Song Qing-shu's clothes. Then she used her watery eyes to look at him as she bit off his clothes bit by bit. "Meow. Aren't you forcing me to make a mistake?" Song Qing-shu was having a fierce battle with reason in his heart. One moment his reason prevailed, and the next moment his desire prevailed. While he was absent-minded, he suddenly felt a cold sensation on his chest. His clothes had been taken off. Song Qing-shu was shocked. At this moment, his entire body was as hard as iron. If Pei Man casually touched his pants, his identity would immediately be exposed. Fortunately, Pei Man remembered that he was a eunuch and unconsciously avoided pulling up his pants, in case she saw something she shouldn't see and spoil her mood. After taking off Song Qingshu's clothes, Empress Pei Man's eyes instantly widened. She stretched out a finger and pressed it against his chest. She couldn't help crying out in surprise. "Emperor, how are you so strong?" Before Song Qingshu could think of a reply, Empress Pei Man actually moved her moist and warm lips to his chest and started sucking on it. His mind went blank. "I can't take it anymore." Song Qingshu flipped over and pressed Empress Pei Man under his body. He felt like his entire body was about to explode, and he urgently needed to release it. Pei Man was also surprised by his actions, but this sudden pressure made her feel very good. She couldn't help letting out a sweet moan. "Emperor, don't be anxious. This concubine wants to let the Emperor face you from behind today." Empress Pei Man reached out to block Song Qingshu's body as she gave a silly smile. The reason she said this was because deep in her heart, she understood that no matter how strong the person in front of her was, he wasn't a real man. If she faced him and saw the incomplete state of his pants, she would instantly lose interest. Once she turned around, she didn't have to worry about this. At least she wouldn't feel annoyed if she didn't see him. Want to be taken from behind? Song Qingshu was stunned. Of course, he wouldn't refuse this kind of request, but he felt it was strange in his heart. Did she already know that he was a fake eunuch? Otherwise, why would she say all of this so naturally? Did she not know that if he was a real eunuch, she could only stare at what would happen next? Song Qingshu's suspicions were quickly answered. When Empress Pei Man turned around and laid on the bed, she took out a stick-like object from somewhere and stuffed it into his hand. "Emperor, please use this to punish this concubine." Lowering his head to size up the item in his hand, Song Qingshu's expression immediately became very strange. The item was dark green in color, and he couldn't tell if it was carved from jade or jade. The edges of the item were polished very smooth and round, and the top was polished into the shape of a half-peeled egg. No wonder she wasn't worried about the problem of eunuchs going to the brothel. She had already thought of using this thing. Song Qingshu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Today was an eye-opener. He had only seen these things in museums before, and they were mostly made of brass. Today, he saw one made of jade, and it was used by the Empress. If this was placed in the future, wouldn't it be a priceless treasure? Emperor, seeing that Song Qingshu didn't move for a long time, Empress Pei Man's voice was full of coquettishness and dissatisfaction. "Go on." Song Qingshu rolled his eyes and suddenly said in a deep voice, "It's so boring to play like this." "Then how does Emperor want to play?" Empress Pei Man stretched out her hand and gently covered her chest, covering her half-untied gown, and asked curiously, "Go and get some carefree powder to liven things up." Song Qingshu said a little nervously. In fact, he was also gambling that the royal family of the Jin Kingdom couldn't resist the feeling of floating in the air brought about by the carefree powder. Of course, Empress Pei Man was different from the people in the laundry yard. If she took this kind of thing, she would definitely strictly control the amount so that she could enjoy the mysterious feeling without becoming addicted. And even if she became addicted, with her status, she could have as much as she wanted. Naturally, she wouldn't be like the people in the laundry yard who couldn't take it on time. "Emperor, you're so bad." Empress Pei Man was also a little curious about how a little eunuch in the Little Xing kingdom knew about the carefree powder. But she just thought that those talkative concubines and palace maids leaked it and didn't take it too seriously. Chapter 795. Your Majesty, please wait a moment. Empress Pei Man charmingly smiled. She didn't get up and moved to the side of the bed. She reached out to open a cabinet next to her and took out an exquisite porcelain bottle. Your Majesty, please enjoy it first. Empress Pei Man held the porcelain bottle and knelt in front of Song Qingshu. Because her hands were holding the porcelain bottle, she didn't have the strength to hold onto her clothes. As a result, the silk gown slid down her shoulders. Finally, because her chest was big enough, it stopped slipping down. But this was already tempting enough. Revealing too much might not make it beautiful. On the contrary, this kind of half undone, not revealing anything was the most tempting. Song Qingshu's mouth was a bit dry, but fortunately he still remembered the important matter in his mind. He took the porcelain bottle from her hands and roughly weighed it. There was still about half a bottle left. Although this amount was more than enough for one person, it was far from enough to save the several dozen women in the laundry yard. Song Qingshu didn't have any intentions of taking this thing. Perhaps it was because of what he had seen in his previous life that he was very disgusted with this kind of medicine. However, seeing Empress Pei Man looking at him with a charming expression, his heart moved. He pinched her smooth chin and poured the medicine down her throat. Too much. Empress Pei Man was a bit flustered and wanted to dodge, but Song Qingshu's hand was like an iron pincer, and she couldn't move at all. Song Qingshu, of course, didn't want her to die from an overdose. When he estimated that it was enough, he let go of her. Although the amount he fed her was more than what she usually got, it wasn't too much. At most, it would make her confused and make her hallucinate. This was exactly what Song Qingshu wanted. After being teased by the yellow-clothed girl's older sister and Empress Pei Man, Song Qingshu already felt like there was a volcano in his stomach that could erupt at any moment. It was a pity that he was disguised as a eunuch. If he impulsively let Empress Pei Man discover his identity, it wouldn't be worth it. Of course, he could use soul transfer to change Pei Man's memories, but he didn't know how long soul transfer would last. After all, the human brain was a very mysterious organ. Even with the advancement of science in his previous life, who knew when she would remember everything? Secondly, there were many people in this world that knew the Nine Manual. Pei Man was the empress of a country, so there might be experts around her. If someone found out that she had soul transfer, it would be troublesome. So unless it was absolutely necessary, he would not consider using soul transfer. Of course, he would not consider using soul transfer. Of his own reason, there were many people around him. He had long passed the Chiyuni period where he would do anything to obtain a woman's body. Using soul transfer to obtain a woman was too easy and was a bit too boring. Your Majesty, Empress Pei Man's incomparably sweet voice caused Song Qingshu to sober up. He lowered his head and saw that her eyes were watery and her skin was incomparably red, as if she was drunk. Her full chest trembled beautifully in the air because of her rapid breathing. Lie down properly. Song Qingshu saw that there was no trace of clarity in her eyes and knew that it was the effect of the unfettered powder. Right now, she had probably already forgotten who she was. Yes, Your Majesty, Empress Pei Man sweetly replied and then obediently lay down. Song Qingshu took a look and his breathing became hurried. Now that things had come to this, he didn't need to worry about anything. His entire body pressed down on her. If you want to see the detailed version, please add Q247005091. You need to have horizontal fan points and above. After verification, you will be invited into the VIP group. The VIP group will not accept individual requests. When Empress Pei Man woke up in the middle of the night, she couldn't help laughing at her own absurdity. She had actually played that kind of fake game with a little eunuch. What made her even more embarrassed was that in her hazy memory, she could still remember the intense pleasure that came from the depths of her soul. She had even begged the other side for mercy. This old lady's body was actually conquered by a little eunuch. Empress Pei Man's face heated up. Now that she thought about it, she really felt embarrassed. That little eunuch was so powerful that this consort couldn't bear to kill him when the time came. Empress Pei Man was lazily lying on the bed when she suddenly felt thirsty and wanted to drink water. Just as she was about to call the palace maids to bring some water, she remembered that in order to keep this a secret, she had sent all the palace maids away. Empress Pei Man smiled and was about to go pour some water herself, but as soon as she got up, her expression changed. She lifted her dress in disbelief and touched the thing that had slid down her thigh. That familiar slippery feeling and special smell made her feel like she had been struck by lightning, and she fell to the ground. Who was it? Could it be that someone else entered the Hall of Peace after that damned eunuch of the Xiaoxing kingdom left? Was it the guards of the Hall of Peace? Or was it Prince Wei's subordinate? Or even Prince Wei himself? Song Qing-shu didn't know that he had accidentally left something in Empress Peiman's body that made her feel like she was sitting on pins and needles. However, his luck was surprisingly good. Countless possibilities flashed through Empress Peiman's mind, but the real reason was ruled out by her first reaction. After coming out of the Hall of Peace, Song Qing-shu felt refreshed. If he wasn't worried about being discovered by the patrolling guards, he even wanted to whistle to express his joy at this moment. Very quickly, he returned to the residence of the Xiaoxing Kingdom. Originally, he thought that the yellow-robed sisters might have fallen asleep. Would he be misunderstood as having some ulterior motive if he went to look for them in the middle of the night? If he hadn't gone a time before the Hall of Peace, he might really have some other thoughts, but now he just wanted to have a good sleep. Who knew that when he entered the courtyard, he would find that the room was lit? Full of doubts, he pushed open the door and entered. As expected, the yellow-robed sisters weren't asleep. One was half leaning against the headboard, and the other was sitting on a stool. They were blankly looking at the door with their hands resting on their cheeks. You weren't waiting for me, were you? Song Qing-shu suddenly felt a little embarrassed. He was enjoying himself outside, but he made two beauties wait here bitterly. The yellow-robed woman suddenly jumped up from the stool and looked at him with a somewhat unfriendly tone. Why did you take so long to come back? I played a little longer in the Hall of Peace, can't I? Song Qing-shu didn't understand why she suddenly lost her temper, so he replied in a bad mood. He sat down and poured himself a cup of water. After being tossed around for half the night, it was time to replenish his strength. Was the Hall of Peace fun? The yellow-robed woman stared at him with eyes as clear as autumn water. Why are you looking at me like that? Song Qing-shu took a sip of tea and recalled Empress Peiman's graceful and moving body. He couldn't help but smile. It was pretty fun. I don't think it's the Hall of Peace that's fun. It's the Empress that's fun. The yellow-robed woman used her pinky finger to push the hair hanging in front of her eyes behind her ear. She bit her lip as she waited for Song Qing-shu. The author's words. 1. Actually, I didn't want to make it so troublesome, but in today's environment, the standards of the website are becoming stricter and stricter. Every few days, the editor calls me to revise previous chapters. I don't want these details to cause problems for the entire book. After all, I spent a lot of effort on this book. 2. I definitely don't want to use this to force readers to join the VIP group or force pirated readers to read the original book. Because even if they don't join the group, just reading the public content will not affect the reading experience. Also, the so-called detailed content doesn't have many words, so it doesn't make a big difference. 3. Due to the difficulty of the operation, currently only vertical user fan points can be verified. Readers from other channels can come online to read the book. Of course, it doesn't matter if they don't come. Refer to the second point. Just reading the public content will not affect the reading experience. 4. Application method to enter the VIP group. First, you need to have vertical user fan points and above, then add Q2470005091 and submit a screenshot of your fan points. After verification, you will be invited into the VIP group. From today onwards, the VIP group will no longer accept individual applications. Finally, I hope we can understand each other. End of this chapter. Chapter 796. I don't think it's the Hall of Peace that's fun. It's the Empress that's fun. The yellow-robed woman used her pinky to tuck her hair behind her ear. She bit her lip and glared at Song Qing. Song Qing felt awkward. He laughed awkwardly and answered, it's fun. You really played with the Empress. The yellow-robed woman's face was full of shock. Halfway through her words, she realized that such indecent words were not suitable to be said. She could only look at Song Qing with a red face. The fifth princess on the bed also sat up straight. Her cherry mouth opened wide, and she subconsciously covered her mouth. I don't need to tell you the specifics. We don't seem to be that familiar. Song Qing finally reacted. This woman is not my wife, nor is she my lover. Why should I feel guilty in front of her? Shameless. The yellow-robed woman angrily sat down on the stool and turned her head away. She didn't even look at him. Hey, how am I shameless? It's normal for a man and a woman to fall in love. Song Qing said gloomily. What do you mean by willing? The yellow-robed woman seemed to have been poked at a sore spot and became angry. A married woman, a married man, one behind her husband, one behind her wife do together. Isn't this shameless? Song Qing suddenly realized that what she said was not without reason. Under the values of this world, this kind of behavior was indeed not very honorable. In fact, in his previous life, this kind of behavior was not honorable either. However, that world was more open-minded in this aspect, so it should be slightly easier to accept. Song Qing felt a bit guilty, but he couldn't admit defeat verbally. Otherwise, in the future, he would be at a disadvantage in front of this woman for no reason. Actually, you've misunderstood me. It's not as dirty as you think. Actually, I have another purpose this time. Song Qing blinked and thought of a way to deal with it. What purpose could you have? The yellow-robed woman sneered. She didn't know why, but she actually had a good impression of a eunuch that Song Qing had pretended to be. But when she found out his true identity, all her good impression turned into anger for being deceived. Especially when she thought about how he had been deliberately watching her make a fool of herself. She wanted to find a hole to hide in. In addition, she had mistakenly thought that he was a eunuch, so she took the initiative to let him help her take off her clothes and heal her wounds. Later, Song Qing forced a kiss on her. The yellow-robed woman felt that the reason why she had not killed him was because she still needed his help to save her suffering sisters. It's all because I wanted to save your pitiful sisters. That's why I didn't hesitate to sacrifice my masculinity to obtain information from the Empress. Song Qing said with a sad and indignant expression. Speaking of which, I have sacrificed my life for the country to a certain extent. You can sacrifice your life for the country like that? The fifth princess, who was sitting at the head of the bed and watching the two of them fight, could not help but burst into laughter when she heard this. Her laughter was like a blooming flower, stunning Song Qing. The fifth princess is truly an outstanding beauty. Song Qing could not help but praise. Hearing Song Qing's praise, Zhao Fujin's face turned slightly red. She actually had the shyness of a young girl. However, she was someone who had experienced great storms, so she quickly recovered and said with a smile, "It's useless for the young master to please me. It's my sister who is angry now." The yellow-robed woman said angrily, "Fifth sister, don't be fooled by him. This person is a famous playboy in Jianghu. I don't know how many women he has provoked. In the end, he came here and hooked up with the Empress. He is really shameless. Prince Song is famous all over the world. He has many women around him. Why would he look at a broken flower like me? Little sister, you worry too much." Zhao Fujin's expression suddenly became gloomy. The yellow-robed woman was shocked and hurried over to comfort her. "Sister, I didn't mean that." Seeing that her sister did not respond, she could not help but turn around and glare at Song Qing. "It's all your fault." "My fault?" Song Qing pointed at his nose and could not help but complain. "I say, Miss Yang, when I first saw you on Mount Shaoshi, your hair and clothes fluttered in the wind. You were as holy and noble as a fairy from the ninth heaven, without a trace of worldly aura. Why have you become no different from those women in the market now?" The yellow-robed woman's face heated up. In fact, she also realized that it was difficult for her to remain calm in front of him. You don't have to deliberately flatter me. I'm not a fairy. I am also a mortal woman. I also have emotions and desires. In the face of an elegant person, I will naturally treat them with respect. In the face of a dirty person like you, I will also, she suddenly froze and did not know how to describe it. You will also be dirty and dirty. Song Qing smiled extremely slyly. Bah! The yellow-robed woman spat, and two red clouds appeared on her pale cheeks. You? Seeing her sister's embarrassed look, the fifth princess could not help but laugh. She then looked up at Song Qing and said with a teasing expression, "Young master, you sacrificed your life for the country. I wonder if you have gained anything?" Hearing that she deliberately emphasized the words "sacrifice his life for the country," even Song Qing, who was thick-skinned enough, felt a little embarrassed. "Of course, I spent so much. How could I not have gained anything? Song Qing took out the xiaoyao powder that he had stolen from Empress Pei Man. Look at this. What is this? Xiaoyao powder. Zhao Fujin exclaimed. She recognized this porcelain bottle. Every time they were given medicine in the laundry yard, they would use this porcelain bottle. IG. Song Qing said something that the two girls found strange. He then continued. The medicinal properties of the xiaoyao powder are very special. It is both a poison and an antidote. As long as the amount is controlled, it should be able to slowly remove the poison in your body. This was only Song Qing's guess. Earlier in the Hall of Peace, he had seen the symptoms of Empress Pei Man after taking the xiaoyao powder. Although she was delirious and hallucinating, the effect of the medicine was much weaker than the poisons he had seen in his previous life. Thus, he guessed that the xiaoyao powder might not be incurable. Of course, there was no need to tell Zhao Fujin and the others everything. It was better to find a chance to discuss it with the yellow-robed woman in private. Thank you, Prince Song. Looking at the porcelain bottle in his hand, Zhao Fujin's face was full of excitement. With this medicine, we sisters can be saved. Song Qing said awkwardly, the amount of medicine in this bottle is too small. It is not enough to cure all of you, so I'm afraid I still have to go to the Jin Kingdom to sacrifice for the country. The yellow-robed woman bit her lip and lightly shook Zhao Fujin's arm. Fifth sister, do you really believe that he's going to find the antidote? He clearly has his eyes on the Empress. He's just enjoying it. Little sister, actually, I really admire Prince Song's behavior. Zhao Fujin sighed faintly. You don't know how those Jin people humiliated imperial father's concubines and the women of the royal family. Back then, King Gai Tian of the Jin Kingdom even made Consort Wei Xian and Consort Kong serve him on the bed. Empress Dowager Wei, the yellow-robed woman exclaimed. The Consort Wei Xian that Zhao Fujin spoke of was the birth mother of the current Southern Song Emperor, Zhao Go. Many years ago, the Southern Song dynasty killed Yu Fei and made peace with the Jin Kingdom. The Jin sent Consort Wei Xian back, and Zhao Go made her the Empress Dowager. As for Consort Kong, she was Zhao Go's legal wife. The two women were truly mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. What a beast, what a beast, Song Qing said bitterly. Even he only dared to think about mother-in-law and daughter-in-law sleeping on the same bed. He had never thought of doing it. He did not expect that the Jin Kingdom would actually do it. As for the male protagonist of the story, King Gai Tian, Song Qing happened to know him. His name was Wanyan Zongxian. Although he was old, he could still be considered to be very powerful. Although Wanyan Liang was also very powerful, he was still far behind Wanyan Zongxian. Wanyan Zongxian was conferred the title of Grand Protector by the late emperor. Now he was not only the head of Shang province, but also the head of the marshal's mansion. He was fully deserving of being the head of the military and political affairs of the Jin Kingdom. Even the Jin emperor had to greet him respectfully. As for the two unfortunate women in the story, Song Qing was not too moved. After all, when the Northern Song dynasty was founded, Zhao Kuangyin destroyed the later Shu and took the imperial concubine Huarue into his harem. Zhao Guangyi destroyed the Southern Tang and captured the Southern Tang emperor, Empress Liu and Empress Zhou. He often summoned Empress Zhou to the palace to humiliate her. He even ordered painters to observe the whole process and then painted a famous painting called Shi Ling Gets Lucky with Empress Zhou. Now that the Northern Song dynasty was destroyed, their descendants suffered the same disaster. In a sense, it was karma. The founding of the Jin Kingdom raped the concubines of the Song dynasty, but the last empress was also avenged by Meng Liang of the Southern Song dynasty, who also painted a painting called Taste Queen. The founding of the Mongolian dynasty plundered the concubines of other countries, and the last empress slept with Lan Yu of the Ming dynasty. All these were just changes of fortune. Bullsh asterisk T. I don't believe in this. It turned out that Song Qing suddenly realized that what he was doing now was no different from Zhao Kuangyin and Zhao Guangyi. If there was really a saying that the fortune had changed, then it would be a tragedy. You have to look at the problem with historical materialism. When an old dynasty is destroyed, the new dynasty masters enjoy their captives. This is inevitable. It has nothing to do with karma or feng shui. Song Qing finally felt relieved. So when I heard that Prince Song did that to the Empress of the Jin Kingdom, I was so happy. I want to thank young master for his great kindness on behalf of all the women who suffered during the Jingnan War. Young master, please accept my bow. Zhao Fujin became more and more excited as he spoke. In the end, he directly got off the bed and knelt in front of Song Qing. The yellow-robed girl was dumbfounded. Fifth sister, what are you doing? Zhao Fujin looked at her deeply. Ingluo, if you still regard me as your sister, then kneel with me and thank young master for his kindness on behalf of us sisters. Chapter 797. What are you two doing? Quickly get up. There was a difference between men and women, so it was not convenient for Song Qing to directly help them up. His hand gently moved in the air, and the two women felt a soft force in front of them, helping them up. The yellow-robed girl couldn't help but roll her eyes. Unlike her sister who didn't know martial arts, she knew that Song Qing clearly had countless opportunities to stop the two women from kneeling, but he pretended to be a good person and helped them up after she knelt down. This was simply abominable. However, she also knew that he was probably taking revenge on her for what happened before, and for a moment, she didn't know whether to blame him or herself. While she was distracted, Song Qing suddenly appeared in front of her. She could almost feel his warm breath on her cheek. The yellow-robed girl subconsciously wanted to move back, but who would have thought that the other's ape-like arms would stretch out and grab her slender waist, leaving her unable to advance or retreat. What do you want to do? The yellow-robed girl was flustered. At this moment, she even forgot that she not only knew martial arts, but that her martial arts were also quite high. Lower your voice. Song Qing didn't show the kind of anxious expression she expected. Instead, he had a serious expression. There are two people in the courtyard outside, and both are experts. One is in the southeast direction, and the other is in the southwest direction. We will each take care of one. We must not let them make any noise and alert the guards. The yellow-robed girl finally understood that she had misunderstood him. After his reminder, she used her chi to investigate and vaguely sensed that there were people in those two places. She couldn't help but secretly exclaim, although this person is a bit greedy and lecherous, his martial arts are really unfathomable. But to reach this level of cultivation, can a person who is really greedy and lecherous do it? You are still distracted at this time. Song Qing was about to act when he suddenly noticed the yellow-robed girl's abnormality. He almost laughed out of anger. It's none of your business. The yellow-robed girl's face was red. She ignored him and directly rushed to the southeast corner. Song Qing saw the yellow-robed girl's graceful figure, and with a light tap of her feet, she rushed out of the window like a fairy flying in the air. He couldn't help but sigh. She is so young, but her cultivation has reached such a level. Huangshang is indeed Huangshang. Song Qing did not hesitate either. He used leaving no trace on the sand to its fullest, which was much better than the Qing Gong in the Nining manual. Therefore, even though he used it later, he still managed to reach the courtyard before the yellow-robed girl. The two people who were hiding in the shadows of the courtyard did not expect that they would arrive in front of them in an instant. The two of them reacted quickly. Seeing that something was wrong, they immediately raised their hands, and a sky full of hidden weapons shot towards Song Qing and the other person. At the same time, they did not stop and flew away. Their reactions were quick-witted enough. If an ordinary master encountered them, even if they were not injured by the hidden weapons, they would not be able to catch up to them in time. Unfortunately, they were not ordinary masters. Whether it was Song Qing or the yellow-robed woman, they could be regarded as the top group of people in the entire martial arts world. The yellow-robed woman raised her white hand. Her 5 slender and delicate fingers looked as if they were carved out of white jade. In an instant, they turned into a sky full of hand shadows, catching all the hidden weapons that were shot at her. Seeing that the person was already more than 100 feet away, her elegant eyebrows wrinkled, both her hands shot out, and all the hidden weapons in her hands were shot back. She only heard a muffled groan, and her whole body fell down, twitched twice, and no longer moved. To be able to use the ghostly 9-een white bone claw in such an ethereal manner, this woman does have some skill. Song Qing smiled. Facing the incoming hidden weapons, his entire body seemed to defy the laws of physics and moved 3 feet horizontally, perfectly dodging the hidden weapons. Then, with the tip of his foot, he instantly closed the distance of more than 100 feet. Under the shocked expression of the black-robed man, Song Qing grabbed his throat. "Speak, who sent you?" His question was mixed with the 9-een manual's soul-shifting technique. The black-robed man subconsciously replied, "Empress, Her Majesty the Empress sent us to monitor little Xing. We cannot let him leave his residence even half a step." "Empress pay man?" Song Qing frowned and casually crushed the man's throat. In fact, he himself did not realize how much he had changed in these 2 years. When he first came to this world from a society ruled by law, he even fantasized that his hands would not be stained with blood. Unfortunately, he was not like Chu Lu Xiang, who lived like a wild crane. Since he had begun to fight for supremacy in the world, killing or not killing was not up to him. After being tempered from the battlefield of blood and fire, the current him was much more ruthless than he had imagined. "Did you get anything out of him?" The yellow-robed woman lightly tapped her feet and floated to Song Qing's side. "Empress Pei Man sent me. She was probably worried that my escape would ruin her grand plan." Song Qing subconsciously answered. "What grand plan?" The yellow-robed woman asked blankly. "I'm not too clear about the specifics." Song Qing did not want to explain more and deliberately changed the topic. "Just now, you used the Thunderbolt Flame Ball technique to shoot the hidden weapons back. You used it very skillfully." The yellow-robed woman could not help but roll her eyes at him. "Come on, compared to your inhuman Qinggong, my little bit of Kung Fu is nothing." Song Qing laughed. "If you're a little bit of Kung Fu, you're also a beautiful little bit of Kung Fu. I'm not stupid like those women around you. I will not be fooled by your sweet words." The yellow-robed woman snorted and directly turned to leave. Song Qing was dumbfounded. Was this woman abandoned by me in my previous life? Why does she dislike me so much? The Empress only sent someone to monitor me. She should not find anything wrong with the person monitoring me in a short period of time. You two are safer here. After returning to the room, Song Qing said to the 2 women, "Young master, are you leaving?" Zhao Fujin savored the subtext in his words. Song Qing nodded. "I still have other things to deal with." "What other things?" "You still have to go back to see his princess wife." The yellow-robed woman sat next to her sister and said lightly. Song Qing shrugged. "If Miss Yang wants me to stay, I can. However, there is only one bed in this room. When the time comes, I will have to trouble the 2 princesses to squeeze with me. Go to hell. Who wants to keep you?" The yellow-robed woman grabbed a pillow from the bed and threw it at him. Song Qing was already prepared. He laughed and turned to leave. After Song Qing's figure disappeared, Zhao Fujin suddenly looked at her sister strangely. "Ying Luo, have you fallen for Prince Song?" The yellow-robed woman's face turned red. "Sister, don't think too much. I'm just unhappy that he has so many women by his side. Yet he is still fooling around." Zhao Fujin looked at her with a mischievous expression. "Who did he touch?" "Oh, I remember now. I think he kissed someone's mouth earlier." Sister, the yellow-robed woman immediately became unhappy. She scratched her armpits and retorted, "Didn't sister also get hugged and touched by him at Autumn Fragrance Brothel? You want to die?" The 2 sisters quickly became a mess. If Song Qing was still here, he would be able to admire the beautiful scene in front of him. After tossing and turning for most of the night, the sky in the distance was already beginning to brighten. In order to avoid being discovered at dawn, Song Qing rushed back to Tang Kuo's residence at lightning speed. After avoiding the servants in the residence, he quietly returned to his room. When he opened the door, he found Wanyan Jebi dozing off by the table. Chapter 798. Wanyan Guobai was still in the same position as before, one hand supporting her delicate chin. The exposed wrist was as white as snow. Because she had just woken up, her enchanting eyes were covered with a layer of blurred and bewitching mist. The light fell on her quiet and beautiful face, the soft lines of her face like a brush stroke. It wasn't clear whether it was the light that illuminated her or she that illuminated the entire room. Song Qing-shu was in the midst of being shocked by the beauty of his nominal wife when he suddenly noticed the shock and confusion in her eyes. Only then did he remember that he had experienced too many things tonight. After saying goodbye to the yellow-robed woman and the others, he had forgotten to put on Tang Kuobian's mask. At this moment, he was unprepared to expose his true face in front of Gobai. After a few seconds of his brain short-circuiting, Song Qing-shu noticed that Wanyan Gobai's towering chest was rising and falling slightly, as if she was preparing to scream. His figure flashed, and before she could make a sound, he unsealed her acupuncture point. Gobai's body went limp, and her whole body fell to the ground. Of course, Song Qing-shu didn't want her to have intimate contact with the cold, hard ground. He reached out and pulled her into his arms. Gobai's delicate body was soft and moving. Although separated by 2 layers of clothing, Song Qing-shu could clearly feel the warmth and amazing elasticity of her body. Noticing that Gobai's face was frightened, and her body seemed to be trembling slightly, Song Qing-shu didn't want this gentle woman to be frightened too much. He said to her, "This beautiful madam, I will unseal your acupuncture point now, but you are not allowed to scream. Otherwise, I will take off your clothes." Gobai's beautiful face was dyed with a layer of red. She blinked her eyes, indicating that she agreed to his conditions. After Song Qing-shu unsealed her acupuncture point, Gobai didn't scream as expected. It was as if she was worried that he would take off her clothes. She carefully lowered her voice soft and mellow. "Ew. Who are you?" "Who I am is not important." Song Qing-shu shook his head. "Today I mistakenly intruded into your residence. It was really a freak accident. I hope Foreign does not blame me." Song Qing-shu had always been extraordinarily handsome, and after being tempered by the winds and waves of life, he possessed a unique and enchanting temperament. Coupled with the fact that he was so kind to her, Gobai's panicked heart finally calmed down a bit. Since it was a mistake, I naturally won't blame young master. However, my husband will be returning soon, so young master should quickly leave. Otherwise, if the guards of the estate are alerted, I'm afraid it won't be so easy for young master to leave. Seeing that Gobai was clearly scared to death, but she was still able to forcefully communicate with him calmly, giving him a way out while also threatening him at the same time. If an ordinary thief saw her using both carrot and stick methods, they would probably be frightened by her. Song Qing-shu couldn't help but sigh. Although Gobai usually looked dignified and weak, she was very strong in her bones. She was worthy of being a princess of a country. This kind of bearing had instantly killed many women in the world. However, being provoked by her like this, Song Qing-shu had a hint of teasing and deliberately said, "The guards of Foreign's Fu are not in my eyes. As for Foreign's husband, since he can let such a beautiful wife stay alone in an empty room, he probably won't be back so soon." As he spoke, he carried her in the direction of the bed. A trace of panic flashed across Gobai's brows, and her voice trembled slightly. Then what do you want?" Seeing the trembling look in her eyes, Song Qing-shu couldn't bear to continue scaring her. "Foreign, don't worry. I'm not an evil person. Remember, Foreign's husband and I are sworn brothers." After gently laying her down on the bed, Song Qing-shu didn't do anything else. Instead, he let go of her body. Only then did Gobai relax slightly. "Sworn brothers? That's right. My surname is Song Qing-shu. If Foreign doesn't believe me, you can wait for Brother Tanqua to return and ask him," replied Song Qing-shu. "You are the Golden Snake King from Shandong." Gobai blurted out, "Foreign, do you know me?" This time, it was Song Qing-shu's turn to be surprised. Gobai nodded slightly. After all, Song Qing-shu had defeated the Qing Kingdom's 100,000 elite troops with only a few thousand soldiers. In addition, the scene of him facing the Manchurian cavalry with great power was so legendary that it had long been known throughout the world. Moreover, the Jin Kingdom and the Qing Kingdom were brotherly states, so they were especially concerned about this matter. In the imperial court, there had been a long debate about the battle, but in the end, no one knew how Song Qingshu had done it. As the Jin Kingdom's princess, she had more or less heard some news. Since you are my husband's sworn brother, you can enter the Fu openly. Why are you acting so sneakily? You even sealed my acupoint. Gobai suddenly realized that something was wrong and looked at him with a reproachful expression. Song Qingshu smiled awkwardly and casually unsealed her acupoint. Foreign, you may not know this, but my identity is very sensitive. If I enter the Fu openly, I'm afraid it will bring you and your husband trouble. As soon as the acupoint was unsealed, Gobai subconsciously shrank to the corner of the bed and stayed far away from him. Hearing his explanation, she was at a loss at first, but soon understood. The Golden Snake Camp was a great threat to the Qin Kingdom, and the Jin Kingdom and the Qin Kingdom were brotherly states, so they naturally saw him as an enemy. If he really swaggered into Tang Qua's Fu openly, it would indeed cause an earthquake. Why did my husband become sworn brothers with him? Gobai's delicate eyebrows flashed with a trace of worry, and her heart was filled with worry. I'm very sorry to have startled you tonight, Foreign. Take this as my apology. Please forgive me, Foreign. Song Qingshu took out an item from his bosom and handed it to Gobai. Then, his figure flashed and disappeared into the night. Seeing Song Qingshu leave, Gobai's whole body softened. Looking at the green and translucent jade in her hand, there was a faint layer of glittering brilliance flowing on its surface. Obviously, it was not an ordinary item. Thinking of the word Bai in her name, she couldn't help but smile. This person really picked out a gift with thought. In fact, this jade was a gift that Tang Quobian had carefully prepared for his wife in Kaifeng City. Unfortunately, he would never have the chance to personally hand it to his wife. Just now, Song Qingshu had a sudden inspiration and could be considered to have fulfilled one of his last wishes. Foreign, Song Qingshu didn't go far. He flashed to a place where Gobai couldn't see and quickly took out Tang Quobian's mask and put it on. After confirming that there were no flaws on his body, he immediately turned back and saw Gobai sitting on the bed in a daze. He walked to her side and shook her shoulder. Only then did Gobai wake up. She looked up and saw her husband standing in front of her. Her eyes were instantly covered with a layer of mist, and she threw herself into Song Qingshu's arms. Stinky husband, bad husband, why did you only come now? Song Qingshu's body stiffened, and he hesitated for a moment before putting his hand on her shoulder. Foreign, what happened? Chapter 799. Song Qingshu knew that Gobai might have been frightened just now. He had prepared a bellyful of words to comfort her, but who knew that before he could open his mouth, all of them were blocked by her soft and warm red lips. Madam, Song Qingshu finally had time, but who knew that just after he said 2 words, his lips would be pressed by 2 snow-white and tender fingers. Don't talk, kiss me. Song Qingshu had been tossing and turning for most of the night and was already exhausted. Who knew that Gobai's voice seemed to have a magical power, suddenly igniting the volcano in his heart. During this period of time, considering the overall situation, Song Qingshu had used a great deal of willpower to restrain himself from touching such an outstanding beauty like Gobai. But today's fooling around with Empress Pei Man had completely ignited his lust. In addition, seeing that there was progress in rescuing everyone, and now that Gobai had taken the initiative to throw herself into his arms, he finally wavered. His left hand held her astonishingly soft waist, and his right hand held her delicate and slender neck. Song Qingshu turned the tables and kissed her heavily. At this time, he was very glad that he had foresight. Before leaving the palace, he took the opportunity to take a bath and change into a clean set of clothes. Otherwise, there would still be the scent of Empress Pei Man on his body, or the fragrance of the yellow-robed sisters. It was impossible for Gobai not to sense it. Originally, he had become a little more cautious because Zhao Fujin had recognized his true identity through his scent. He didn't expect to use it so soon. Gobai's lips, which seemed to have been moisturized by the morning dew, were slightly open. Under the light, They were exceptionally tender and beautiful. Song Qing couldn't help kissing her. Soon, Goodbye's delicate and white face gradually became intoxicating red, and her beautiful eyes also glowed with a blurry and seductive look. Song Qing unbuttoned her collar, and a pair of big hands slid under her clothes after the clouds and rain dispersed. Goodbye's face was flushed, and her hair was messy as she shrank into Song Qingshu's arms. "Husband, I don't know why, but being intimate with you today felt a little strange." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat, but he asked calmly, "What's so strange about it?" "I'm not coming up either." Goodbye's eyes flashed with a trace of confusion, but she quickly smiled and shook her head. "Maybe we've been separated for too long, so we're a little unfamiliar now." Seeing that she didn't think too much about it, Song Qingshu secretly breathed a sigh of relief. He put his arm around her waist and hugged her tightly. "Let's be more intimate in the future, and we'll be familiar with each other. Aren't you embarrassed?" Goodbye pouted coquettishly. "You have no idea how cold you've been to me all this time. I've been waiting for you to apologize, but who knew you would be so heartless and ignore me? Didn't you also ignore me?" Song Qingshu couldn't help but say. "Who asked you to let you?" Goodbye suddenly closed her mouth and turned around. Song Qingshu smiled and leaned forward, pinching the soft flesh on her chest and playing with it. "What do you want me to do? Why are you so shameless?" Goodbye's body trembled, and she wanted to push his evil hand away, but Song Qingshu was determined. She pushed him several times, but he didn't push her away, so she could only let him be. "You must be very proud now." Goodbye rolled her eyes at him and pouted. "What are you proud of?" Song Qingshu leaned over and kissed her slender neck. "Don't play with me anymore. It tickles." Goodbye giggled a few times, and it took her a lot of effort to push him away. She looked at the man beside her and sighed. "Of course you're proud now. You married the elder sister and stole the younger sister. I don't know if we owed you in our previous lives, but both of us were taken by you." "What do you mean by taken?" Song Qingshu said guiltily. "Ping was willing. If she hadn't been willing, do you think I would have forgiven you?" Goodbye couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. "Actually, I also know that Ping has had a strange feeling for you since she was young. I originally thought that when she grew up and found her own sweetheart, this feeling would fade. Who knew? Humph, it seems that I trusted you wrongly. As long as you are firm, no matter what Ping thinks, nothing will happen." That time was actually a coincidence. Song Qingshu hesitated and roughly told her what had happened that night in the mountain stream. When she heard that Wanyan Ping had fallen off the cliff, even though she knew that she was fine, Goodbye still exclaimed. When she heard that Song Qingshu had pulled her in the nick of time, and the two of them had tumbled down the mountain stream, she couldn't help but say sourly, "I had thought that Ping would be heartless. I didn't think that you would give up your life to save her. Actually, the reason I tried so hard for Ping was mainly for you." Song Qingshu was used to seeing storms and was familiar with this kind of situation. Seeing that he had successfully attracted Goodbye's attention, he continued, "I know that you have a deep sisterly love. If I didn't save her, wouldn't you blame me for the rest of your life? At that time, no matter what we do, the relationship between us will never recover. You only know how to coax me. I don't believe that you don't have any feelings for Ping." While Goodbye said this, the light in her eyes betrayed the joy in her heart. Song Qingshu laughed awkwardly. "I won't deny that I do have a good impression of Ping. After all, we watch her grow up. It's hard not to be moved by such a delicate and lovely girl. The fox's tail is showing." Goodbye pinched his waist and snorted. "Actually, Ping is only so beautiful in front of you. In front of the other nobles in Jing, she is a famous demoness. So every time I see her so gentle to you, I know that this day is unavoidable." What could Song Qingshu do now? He could only smile foolishly. "Right, the conversation just now is between you and me. Don't mention in front of Ping that you saved her because of me. She likes you so much. If she knew the truth, she would be very hurt." Goodbye suddenly raised her head and stared at him. Looking at her black hair that hung down like a waterfall, Song Qingshu once again sighed at this woman's beauty. He reached out and pulled her hair to the back of her head. He replied with a smile, Don't worry, I'm not a fool. When the time comes, I will definitely say something else in front of her. Don't blame me then. Why would I blame you? Do you think I don't know your feelings? Goodbye put her face on Song Qingshu's chest and said softly. As Song Qingshu was sighing at how kind this woman was, he heard her speak again. Now, I am worried about something else. How do you plan to deal with the matter between you and Ping Er? How? Song Qingshu was dumbfounded. In truth, he was more thinking of enjoying himself. Although he would not abandon her after he had slept with her, he really did not think about how to deal with the problem of the aftermath. Ping Er and I are both princesses, not to mention our Jin kingdom. Even other kingdoms have never heard of two princesses marrying the same son-in-law. I'm afraid that my brother may not agree to your marriage. Gubai said worriedly. Song Qingshu was somewhat silent. Right now, he was thinking about how to save Song Yuanxiao and the princesses of the laundry brothel. His marriage with Wan Yinping was too far away. Seeing Song Qingshu's distressed expression, Gubai was both angry and amused. She said, "So you haven't thought about this problem?" Fortunately, Ping Er is still alive. Her marriage will only be brought forward in 2 years, so you have about 2 years to think of a way. In any case, I won't help you, and I can't help you either. If you want to enjoy the happiness of having 2 wives, you have to put in more effort than others. At this time, Song Qingshu had completely fallen into the role of Tang Quobian. He laughed and hugged her. As the principal wife, you acquiesced in me marrying your sister. That is already the greatest help. How can I be greedy and trouble you? Seeing that her husband understood her efforts, Gubai felt that it was all worth it. Hearing him mention Wan Yinping, she thought of something and blushed. After hesitating for a long time, she suddenly moved closer to Song Qingshu's ear and asked, "Tell me the truth. Do you prefer me or Ping Er?" Seeing that she wanted to say something but stopped, Song Qingshu deliberately teased her. "What do I prefer with you? Like what happened just now. Who do you prefer with?" Gubai did not expect that she would ask such an embarrassing question. In truth, when she found out what happened between the two of them, this question had been in her heart. After all, it was a woman's nature to be curious. However, when the two of them had been in a cold war, she had been too embarrassed to ask. Now that the two of them were back together and had just experienced a sweet moment, she felt warm and blurted out the question. "If I tell you the truth, you can't be angry." Song Qingshu's words made Gubai's heart sink. She had to force a smile and said, "Don't worry, I won't be angry. Actually, I like to—" Song Qingshu deliberately paused. When she put her ear closer, he quickly said, "I like to be with you two sisters the most. You're going to die." Gubai's face was red with shame. She waved her fists and wanted to hit Song Qingshu. But how could her fist be compared to Song Qingshu's dragon claw hand? Realizing that she would be at a disadvantage if they continued, Gubai blushed and stopped fighting. "By the way, I know that you shouldn't tell Ping Er about this for the time being." Song Qingshu was stunned. "Why? Since that day, that girl doesn't even dare to look me in the eye. I want to see how long she will hide from me." Gubai snorted. Song Qingshu said, "Ping has been very guilty about this. It's not good to deliberately play tricks on her like this. You haven't even entered the door yet, and you're already speaking up for her?" Gubai bit her lip and stared at Song Qingshu. "That girl stole my sister's man. What's wrong with letting her suffer a few more days of guilt?" Okay, I'll listen to you." Song Qingshu secretly clicked his tongue. No matter how gentle a woman was, she could be very scary when she was evil. "You should be happy. If it weren't for what happened today, I wouldn't have let you off so easily. Here it comes." Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He pretended to know nothing and asked, "What's the matter?" Gubai told him what had happened before. "Is that Song Qingshu really your sworn brother?" To all readers, those interested in reading the unabridged version, please join the VIP group. 1. Actually, I didn't want to go through so much trouble, but in today's environment, the standards of the website are getting stricter and stricter. Every now and then, the editor would ask me to edit the previous chapters. I don't want these details to cause problems for the whole book. After all, I spent a lot of effort on this book. 2. I definitely don't want to force readers to join the VIP group or force pirated readers to read the original version. Even if you don't join the group, reading the public content will not affect the reading experience. The so-called unabridged version doesn't have many words, so it doesn't make a big difference. 3. Due to the difficulty of the operation, I can only verify the fan points of vertical and horizontal users. Readers from other channels can read the book online. Of course, it doesn't matter if they don't. Just reading the public content will not affect the reading experience. 4. Application method to enter the VIP group. First, you need to have vertical and horizontal fan points or above. Then add your queue to 470005091 and submit a screenshot of your fan points. After verification, you will be invited into the VIP group. From today onwards, the VIP group will no longer accept individual applications. Chapter 800. What do you think of him? Song Qingshu asked calmly. Goodbye's brows furrowed slightly as she replied. At first, I thought he was a rapist, so I was a little scared. But after the misunderstanding was cleared up, I realized that he wasn't a bad person. He had a handsome appearance, and aside from the fact that he sealed my acupoint at the beginning, there was nothing excessive about his behavior. He could be considered a modest gentleman. Song Qingshu didn't think that she would have such a high evaluation of him in her heart. He couldn't help but feel a bit proud of himself. He decided to blow his own trumpet. This sworn brother of mine, is someone who can charm tens of thousands of girls. There are rumors that he can take a person's chastity from 1,000 miles away. Madam, don't let him steal your soul. Goodbye immediately became angry. What are you talking about? Have I ever looked at other men all these years? Heaven and earth can bear witness to your feelings. Don't you know that? Why do you have to defile me like this? As she spoke, her eyes turned red, and the surface of her eyes was covered with a faint mist. Song Qingshu hurriedly comforted her. Actually, there's a reason why I said that. I met him in Kaifeng. Song Qingshu roughly described the process of how they met, and then deliberately said, later, we hit it off and became brothers. We even made the most sacred vow that if I died one day, you would be taken care of by him. Ba. Goodbye hurriedly reached out to cover his mouth. Don't say such inauspicious words. Song Qingshu smiled. He knew that this kind of thing was as bad as not going far enough. He would slowly give her a warning so that when she knew the truth in the future, it would not be so hard to accept. My husband, I know that you are worried that someone will covet me. So many people have asked you to become sworn brothers, but you have refused. This time, you actually took the initiative to propose to become sworn brothers with him. It seems that Song Qingshu is really a character. Goodbye sighed and suddenly stretched out her hand to draw circles on Song Qingshu's chest. The Han people have a saying, femme fatale. All these years, I brought you so much trouble and caused you to offend so many people. As the head of one of the 3 major families, you can only be a minister in name only. Do you blame me? Song Qingshu sighed. Song Qingshu grabbed her slender waist and buried his head in her chest. He said in a low, muffled voice, Why would I blame you? I heard that many men in the capital have privately said that if they could spend a night with you, they would be willing to lose 10 years of their lives. But I can enjoy you every day. What does a mere official position matter to me? Why are you so rogue? Although Goodbye laughed and scolded, she felt sweet in her heart when she heard her husband's thoughts. Don't kiss there. What followed was another round of red waves. Finally, the two were exhausted and fell asleep in each other's arms. After sleeping for an unknown amount of time, a servant's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Master, Madam, Wei Wang is here. The two woke up one after another and couldn't help but look at each other, wondering what he was here for. Serve them some tea. We'll be right there. Song Qingshu ordered and began to put on his clothes. What is Wei Wang doing? Why is he here so early in the morning? How annoying. Goodbye yawned, her eyes filled with sleep. Song Qingshu looked at the bright sunlight outside the window and couldn't help but smile. The sun has already risen so high. It is not early anymore. Last night, although Song Qingshu had spent the first half of the night at Empress Peiman's place and had sex with Goodbye several times when he came back, If it had been a normal man, even if the other party was as beautiful as a fairy, he probably wouldn't have been able to withstand it. Fortunately, Song Qingshu's cultivation technique was special and could achieve yin and yang coexistence. Thus, when he woke up, he felt refreshed. He felt that the depression that had accumulated over the past few days and the small internal injuries that he had suffered had all healed. However, Goodbye wasn't so lucky. She had waited for him in the room for the whole night and then was tormented by him for most of the night. At this moment, her entire body was so numb that it felt like it was going to fall apart. She wanted nothing more than to hug the blanket and sleep for 3 days and 3 nights. Song Qingshu was putting on his clothes when he suddenly stopped hearing Goodbye's voice. He turned around and couldn't help but smile. It turned out that Goodbye was sitting on the bed with her eyes half closed. Her head was nodding slowly. She didn't even notice that the blanket had slipped down to her waist, exposing her extremely alluring body to the slightly cold air. Song Qingshu's heart skipped a beat. He leaned over and kissed her chest again. With her vital area being attacked, Goodbye woke up no matter how sleepy she was. She pushed Song Qingshu away and said softly, "Look at you. You left so many marks on my body last night, and now you're still bullying me." Seeing her snow-white and alluring body covered with lipstick marks and marks from their lovemaking, Song Qingshu felt very proud. He hugged her in his arms and said, "You're so beautiful." Goodbye smiled sweetly and said, all right, get up quickly. I'm afraid that Wei Wang is getting impatient waiting outside." The two hurriedly put on their clothes. Because Goodbye's current lazy appearance made it inconvenient for her to receive guests, Song Qingshu went to entertain Wei Wang first. Goodbye washed up in the room before going out. Song Qingshu had just walked to the entrance of the hall when he heard the sound of a cup shattering. He said, "This is ridiculous. How arrogant. When is your master going to come out? Brother Wang, why do you have to make things difficult for a servant? Moreover, they are considered your elders. It's not a big deal to wait for them." A crisp and delicate voice sounded, as if comforting Wei Wang. Song Qingshu was stunned. Who was this girl who came with Wei Wang? What elders? When I ascend to the throne, they will all be my subjects. Wei Wang's voice was filled with indignation. Song Qingshu frowned. This Wei Wang was arrogant and offended people everywhere. It was a miracle that he could live to this age. Although he hated him, he still had to deal with him. He pretended not to hear what was said and walked straight in. "I made Wei Wang wait for a long time. Please forgive me." As Song Qingshu was speaking, he suddenly saw the young girl sitting beside Wei Wang. Her delicate and charming cheeks were as clear as jade. Below her elegant and straight nose bridge, her red lips were tender and moist, and they were slightly tilted mischievously. It was as if there was a faintly discernible smile on her face, giving people a good impression of her. There's actually such a beautiful girl in the Jin Kingdom. Song Qingshu was slightly stunned. This girl was already so beautiful at such a young age. When she fully matured, her looks would probably not be inferior to Goodbye's. However, this was not what he was most concerned about. What he was most concerned about was the girl's lively eyes. He felt that he had seen them somewhere before. However, he could not recall where he had seen them. Chapter 801. Uncle. Song Qingshu was stunned. How come he didn't remember Tang Quobian having a niece like this? Before he could react, King Wei laughed coldly. "I say, Tang Quobian, have you never seen a woman before? Can't you take your eyes off a pretty girl?" Song Qingshu was furious. "Dao Yin, as a junior, what right do you have to talk to your elders like this? Did no one teach you the ways of filial piety?" Goodbye was Jin Shizong's younger sister, so she was naturally King Wei's aunt. In theory, King Wei had to call him uncle. For the sake of the big picture, he didn't mind pretending to be courteous with old foxes like Wan Yin Liang and Empress Peiman. He was kind to the yellow shirt girl. At least she was pleasing to the eye. It was fun to tease her. King Wei was just an arrogant young boy. What reason did he have to be bullied by him? He was already upset when he was woken up from his bed in the middle of his sleep. Now that he was scolded by him, even a clay figurine would get angry. "Who do you think you are? You want to be my elder?" King Wei suddenly stood up. You're just a man who lives off a woman. After I ascend to the throne, I will order my aunt to divorce you. Without my aunt, I want to see how you can be so arrogant. Wait until you have the ability to sit on the throne before you say that, Song Qingshu said coldly. King Wei might be arrogant, but he was very sensitive in this area. He immediately understood the meaning behind his words. Do you think that the throne doesn't belong to me? What a joke. I am my father's only son. Song Qingshu wasn't interested in listening to him blow his own trumpet. He said expressionlessly, You are so eager for the throne. Are you cursing His Majesty's early death? King Wei was speechless. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that he shouldn't say something like that. He hurriedly said, Of course not. Tranquil, don't slander me. Provoking the relationship between father and son, you should be slapped. A sinister voice suddenly came from the shadows, and a black shadow instantly pounced towards Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu's eyes were sharp, and he recognized that this was the expert who fought with the yellow-robed girl in Taihe Palace. He should be the shadow guard that Jin Shizong assigned to protect Wei Wang. At this moment, Goodbye had just finished washing up and was coming out of the inner hall. When she saw this scene, she couldn't help but exclaim, No. Unfortunately, she was too slow, and she wasn't the owner of the shadow. The shadow didn't slow down at all. It raised its palm high and slapped Song Qingshu's face. If the slap landed, even if he didn't pass out, he would at least lose a few teeth. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap rang out in the hall. Goodbye angrily rushed over and said, Dao Yin, you've gone too far. No matter what, he is your uncle. How dare you order your subordinate to hurt him? I will definitely ask my royal brother. Ask my royal brother. Just then, Goodbye suddenly realized that the situation had changed. Everything had happened too quickly, and she instinctively thought that her husband had been slapped. In a moment of anger, she ran over to question King Wei. It wasn't until she noticed the dumbfounded expressions of King Wei and the young girl that she realized that something was wrong. She turned around and looked at her husband, only to see him standing there unscathed. Instead, the arrogant shadow was now kneeling in front of her husband in horror, and there were 5 obvious finger marks on his face. No one in the hall had expected such a dramatic turn of events. The higher-ups of the Jin Kingdom had also heard of this expert under King Wei's command. This person was highly skilled in martial arts and could appear and disappear unpredictably. If he was in the Jianghu, he would also be able to make a name for himself. Such an expert wanted to slap someone, but was slapped in the face instead. Dao Yin, there's no place for a servant like you to interrupt us when we are talking. Uncle has already taught him a lesson for you. There's no need to thank me. Song Qingshu secretly felt lucky. If it wasn't for the fact that the opponent was unprepared, he wouldn't have been able to hit him so easily. In a fight between experts, there was only a thin line. Moreover, Song Qingshu's martial arts were already above that person's, and the opponent wasn't prepared at all. That was why such a dramatic turn of events had happened. The black shadow finally reacted, and his face turned red. He thought that it was a moment of carelessness that allowed Song Qingshu to take advantage of him. He couldn't help but stand up angrily and wanted to save his face. Goodbye suddenly opened her arms and stood in front of Song Qingshu. Her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent as she stared at him. How dare you? Although the black shadow was angry, he knew that Goodbye was of high status. Moreover, she was known as the #1 beauty of the Jin Kingdom. Now that she had opened her arms and her breasts, if he accidentally touched something he shouldn't touch, she would immediately accuse him of molesting a princess. Even his master wouldn't be able to save him. Therefore, he subconsciously turned around and looked at Wei Wang, asking for his opinion. Wei Wang's face turned green and white. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Get back here now. A flash of anger flashed in the black shadow's eyes, but he quickly concealed it. He lowered his head and returned to Wei Wang's side. Wei Wang glared at Song Qingshu and said through gritted teeth, Very good, very good. Tranquil, I will remember what happened today. Let's go. After saying that, he signaled his subordinates to leave. When he passed by the young girl, she smiled and said, Brother, I still want to talk to my aunt. I want to accompany you. Wei Wang snorted. He didn't stay any longer and left with his men. Husband, we have offended him today. I'm afraid our days as husband and wife will not be easy in the future. Gobai's beautiful face revealed a trace of worry. Aunt, don't worry. Brother Tanqua is just saying a few words out of anger. Moreover, Uncle Tanqua is one of the leaders of the 3 major clans. Even if Brother Tanqua has any ideas, he has to consider the bigger picture. The young girl walked over and said in a clear and delicate voice. Song Qingshu was puzzled. This young girl called Goodbye Aunt and called him uncle. Who exactly was she? However, he didn't dare to show that he didn't know her. His curiosity was immediately aroused. Goodbye felt slightly relieved. She held the young girl's hand and smiled. Zhongjia, how come you have time to visit Aunt today? Goodbye's words quickly solved the doubts in Song Qingshu's heart. So it was the Grand Preceptor's daughter, Wanyin Zhongjia. He couldn't help but think of the time when he was with Zhao Min and Kai Feng. She had once listed the beauties of the grasslands and emphasized Wanyin Zhongjia. Zhongjia's mother, Pucha Elihu, was the former #1 beauty of the grasslands. Her father, Wanyin Ahu, was the eldest grandson of the first branch of the Jinazong branch. Unfortunately, he was involved in a rebellion with his father, Wanyin Zongpan, and was executed together. Although Wanyin Zongpan's rebellion was quelled, only the mother and daughter were left of the branch. It was inevitable that the branch would decline. The power of the Taizong branch fell into the hands of Wanyin Zongbin of the 7th branch. Zhongjia inherited her mother's beauty. At the same time, she was showing signs of surpassing her mother. In the entire Daxing prefecture, there were countless men secretly eyeing the mother and daughter. Chapter 802. Uncle. Song Qingshu was stunned. How come he didn't remember Tang Quobian having a niece like this? Before he could react, King Wei laughed coldly. I say, Tang Quobian, have you never seen a woman before? Can't you take your eyes off a pretty girl? Song Qingshu was furious. Dao Yin, as a junior, what right do you have to talk to your elders like this? Did no one teach you the ways of filial piety? Gobai was Jin Shizong's younger sister, so she was naturally King Wei's aunt. In theory, King Wei still had to call him uncle. For the sake of the big picture, he didn't mind pretending to be courteous with old foxes like Wanyan Liang and Empress Peiman. He was kind to the yellow shirt girl. At least she was pleasing to the eye. It was fun to tease her. King Wei was just an arrogant young boy. What reason did he have to be bullied by him? He was already upset when he was woken up from his bed in the middle of his sleep. Now that he was scolded by him, even a clay figurine would get angry. Who do you think you are? You want to be my elder? King Wei suddenly stood up. You're just a man who lives off a woman. After I ascend to the throne, I'll order my aunt to divorce you. Without my aunt, I'd like to see how you can be so arrogant. Say that when you're capable enough to sit on the throne, Song Qingshu said coldly. King Wei was arrogant, but he was very sensitive in this area. He immediately understood what he meant. Do you think that the throne doesn't belong to me? That's ridiculous. I'm my father's only son. Song Qingshu wasn't interested in listening to him blow his own trumpet. He said expressionlessly, You're so eager for the throne. Are you cursing His Majesty's early death? King Wei was speechless. No matter how stupid he was, he knew that he shouldn't say something like that. He hurriedly said, Of course not. Tang Quobian, don't slander me. Provoking the relationship between father and son, you should be slapped. A sinister voice suddenly came from the shadows, and a black shadow instantly pounced towards Song Qingshu. Song Qingshu's eyes were sharp, and he recognized that this was the expert who fought with the yellow-robed girl in Taiha Palace. He should be the shadow guard that Jin Shizong assigned to protect Wei Wang. At this moment, Gobai had just finished washing up and was coming out of the inner hall. When she saw this scene, she couldn't help but exclaim, No. Unfortunately, she was too slow, and she was not the owner of the Black Shadow. The Black Shadow's movements did not slow down at all. He raised his palm high and slapped Song Qingshu's face. If the slap landed, even if he did not faint, he would at least lose a few teeth. Pa! The crisp sound of a slap rang out in the hall. Gobai angrily rushed over and said, Dao Yin, you've gone too far. No matter what, he is your uncle. How dare you order your subordinate to hurt him? I will definitely ask my royal brother. Ask my royal brother. Just then, Gobai suddenly realized that the situation had changed. Everything had happened too quickly, and she subconsciously thought that her husband had been slapped. In a moment of anger, she ran over to question King Wei. It was not until she noticed the dumbfounded expressions of King Wei and the young girl that she realized that something was wrong. She turned around and looked at her husband, only to see him standing there unharmed. Instead, the arrogant black shadow was now kneeling in front of her husband in horror, and there were 5 obvious finger marks on his face. No one in the hall had expected such a dramatic turn of events. Even the higher-ups of the Jin Kingdom had heard of this expert under King Wei. This person was highly skilled in martial arts and could appear and disappear unpredictably. If he was in the pugilistic world, he would also be able to make a name for himself. Such an expert wanted to slap someone, but was slapped in the face instead. It was really unacceptable. Dao Yin, there is no place for a servant like you to interrupt us when we are talking. Uncle has already taught him a lesson for you. There is no need to thank me. Song Qingshu secretly thought that he was lucky. If it was not for the fact that the opponent was unprepared, he would not have been able to hit him so easily. In a fight between experts, there was only a thin line. Moreover, Song Qingshu's martial arts were already above that person's, and the opponent was not prepared at all. That was why such a dramatic turn of events had happened. The Black Shadow finally reacted, and his face turned red. He thought that it was a moment of carelessness that allowed Song Qingshu to take advantage of him. He could not help but stand up angrily and wanted to find him to save his face. Gobai suddenly opened her arms and stood in front of Song Qingshu. Her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent as she stared at him. How dare you? Although the Black Shadow was angry, he knew that Gobai was of high status. Moreover, she was known as the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom. Now that she had opened her arms and her breasts, if he accidentally touched something that he should not touch, she would immediately accuse him of molesting a princess. Even his master would not be able to save him. Therefore, he subconsciously looked back at King Wei and asked for his opinion. King Wei's face turned green and white. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Get back here now. A flash of anger flashed in the Black Shadow's eyes, but he quickly concealed it. He lowered his head and returned to King Wei's side. King Wei stared at Song Qingshu and said through gritted teeth, Very good, very good. Tranquil bien, I will remember what happened today. Let's go. After that, he signaled his men to leave. When he passed by the young girl, she smiled and said, Brother, I still want to talk to my aunt. I will not accompany you. King Wei snorted and did not linger. He left with his men. Husband, we have offended him today. I am afraid that our future as husband and wife will not be easy. Gobai's beautiful face revealed a trace of worry. Aunt, don't worry. Brother Tanqua is just saying a few words out of anger. Moreover, Uncle Tanqua is one of the leaders of the 3 major clans. Even if Brother Tanqua has any ideas, he has to consider the overall situation. The young girl walked over and said in a clear and delicate voice. Song Qingshu was puzzled. This young girl called Gobai aunt and called him uncle. Who was she? However, he did not dare to show that he did not know her. His curiosity was immediately piqued. Gobai felt a little relieved. She held the young girl's hand and smiled. Zhongjia, why are you free to visit me today? Gobai's words quickly solved the doubts in Song Qingshu's heart. So it was the Grand Preceptor's daughter, Wanyan Zhongjia. He could not help but think of the time when he was with Zhao Min and Kaifeng. She had once listed the beauties of the grasslands and had mentioned Wanyan Zhongjia. Zhongjia's mother, Pucha Aliho, was the former #1 beauty of the grasslands. Her father, Wanyan Ahu, was the eldest grandson of the first branch of the Jinazong branch. Unfortunately, he and his father, Wanyan Zongpan, were involved in a rebellion and were executed together. Although Wanyan Zongpan's rebellion was quelled, only the mother and daughter were left of the branch. It was inevitable that the branch would decline. The power of the Taizong branch fell into the hands of Wanyan Zongbin of the 7th branch. Zhong Jie had inherited her mother's beauty. At the same time, she was showing signs of surpassing her mother. In the entire Daxing prefecture, many men secretly had designs on this mother and daughter pair. Chapter 803. A charming widow living alone with a ridiculously beautiful daughter. TSK, TSK, TSK. I wonder how many men would be jealous. Although Song Qingshu had never seen her mother, with Gubai as a comparison, since she was known as the #1 beauty of the Jin Kingdom in the past, she must be a beauty that could bring disaster to the country and its people. I've actually wanted to visit Annie for a long time, but I never had the chance. Today, I happened to run into Brother Wei Wang, so I came along. Zhong Jie smiled sweetly, but her eyes glanced at Song Qingshu intentionally or unintentionally. Song Qingshu couldn't help but feel strange. Why did this girl keep staring at him? When he thought of that strange feeling of déjà vu, he became even more puzzled. Gubai pulled Zhong Jie to sit down. Hearing her say this, she casually asked, "Zhong Jie, do you know why Prince of Wei is here?" She couldn't help but be curious. After all, Wei Wang rarely came to her place these past few years. This time, he must have come for a reason. "Zhong Jie, I don't dare." The girl looked at her hesitantly. Gubai was slightly startled. "We're all family, why wouldn't I dare? I'm afraid that Auntie will be unhappy if I come out." The girl's big eyes blinked, like a delicate porcelain doll sitting there. However, Song Qingshu keenly noticed a trace of slyness in the depths of her eyes. "All right, Annie promises that she won't be unhappy." Gubai's interest was indeed aroused. "Actually, it's like this." The girl paused and looked at Song Qingshu before continuing. "Brother Wei Wang can't bear to see Auntie being deceived by a bad man, so he decided to come and warn Auntie." Song Qingshu was puzzled by her gaze. "Why are you looking at me?" "Because the bad man is Uncle Tangqua." The girl's smile was sweet and clear, but her words almost angered Song Qingshu to death. "Uncle Tangqua, how did it feel to be the top courtesan of Xiaoxiang brothel yesterday?" Song Qingshu's face heated up. "What does a girl like you know about taste?" "The courtesan of Autumn Fragrance Brothel." Gubai looked at Zhong Jie blankly. "Looks like Uncle Tangqua didn't talk to Annie," the young girl said, as if inadvertently. "It's like this." She then told her about how a group of men spent a lot of money to fight for the title of courtesan belle in Autumn Fragrance Brothel last night, and how Tangqua won the beauty. Song Qingshu's face was very dark. This young girl looked innocent and romantic on the surface, but she was intentionally or unintentionally sowing discord between them. Wei Wang had clearly left, but she had repeated what Wei Wang wanted to do. From his point of view, Wei Wang might have come here because of this young girl. Song Qingshu was still thinking about how to explain it to Gubai. After all, he only came back last night when it was almost dawn. After being deliberately provoked by Zhong Jie, it would be strange if Gubai wasn't angry. However, Gubai's following reaction almost made his eyeballs pop out. Her expression was normal as she smiled faintly. It's normal for a man to go out and have fun occasionally. Wei Wang is really making a big deal out of it. Song Qingshu didn't know what to do. With a wife like this, did Tangqua save the earth in his past life? The young girl was also stunned. The scene she had imagined didn't happen. She didn't expect Gubai to be so calm. However, she reacted quickly and immediately said, "That's right. In my opinion, Brother Wei Wang might not really have any sense of justice. I'm afraid it's more because Uncle Tangqua snatched the title of courtesan of Autumn Fragrance Brothel from him last night. That's why he came here early in the morning to cause trouble." Gubai smiled gently, revealing a row of white teeth. She didn't continue the conversation. Instead, she sighed softly. "I pity that courtesan of Autumn Fragrance Brothel. She used to be a high and mighty princess, but now she has become a commodity for men to pick and choose from." Sigh. Song Qingshu didn't expect Gubai to have such a kind heart. For a moment, his heart was filled with emotions, and he didn't know what to say. The young girl, however, didn't think much of it. Those Song people are useless. What's there to be pitted about? Gobai shook her head slightly. Otherwise, when the Song Kingdom was weak and the Gene Kingdom was strong, the Song Kingdom's princess became a captive. If the Gene Kingdom is weak in the future and the Daxing Constabulary is conquered by a strong enemy, how can our fates be any better than hers? The weak are prey to the strong. That's the truth of the world. The young girl said expressionlessly. However, Gobai's words had touched a sore spot in her heart, and she suddenly fell silent. Seeing the two women's dejected expressions, Song Qingshu laughed. Don't worry. There are still men like us to protect the country. Gobai looked at him tenderly with a smile on her face. The young girl replied coldly. Those Song women were also sold by their men. Song Qingshu choked. Why was this young girl always making things difficult for him? Had Tang Kuobian offended her in some way? The young girl also realized that she had lost her composure. Embarrassed to stay any longer, she stood up and bid farewell to the two men. Before she left, she suddenly asked, by the way, tonight is Chiu Chao's coming-of-age ceremony. Aunt and Uncle Tangqua, are you going? Chiu Chao, coming-of-age ceremony? Song Qingshu was confused. He had no idea who Chiu Chao was. Gobai nodded and smiled. It's the coming-of-age ceremony of the eldest sister of the Pucha family. Of course, the Tangqua family will be there. After receiving confirmation from Song Qingshu, the young girl suddenly became happy and skipped away. Seeing the confusion on Song Qingshu's face, Gobai explained, during this period of time, you've been elusive, so I've received the invitation from the Pucha clan on your behalf. Today is Chiu Chao's 14th birthday, and our three great clans have always been close, so of course we have to go and support her. I've already prepared the gift, so you don't have to worry, husband. Is Chiu Chao Pucha a Hut or Pucha a Hoodie's daughter? Song Qingshu asked directly. After all, Chiu Chao was still young, so it was normal that Tang Kuobian didn't know her. Pucha, a Hut, and a Hoodie were now the masters of the Pucha family. One of them was the left deputy prefect, while the other was the right deputy prefect. It could be said that they controlled the imperial army of the imperial city. Look at your memory. Chiu Chao is Pucha, a Hut's daughter. Gobai rolled her eyes at her husband. At this time, in the Pucha family's mansion, a delicate young girl was smashing vase after vase at a middle-aged man. I don't want to marry that cripple Yang. I, Pucha Chiu Chao, am in love with the most valiant warrior in the entire Gene Kingdom. I won't even look at that cripple. Don't smash it, don't smash it. That vase was a gift from father's friend in the Qin Kingdom. It's very precious. Looking at the shattered vases on the floor, the middle-aged man looked distressed. This isn't a matter of whether you want to marry him or not. You were betrothed before you were born. Chapter 804. Whoever arranged the marriage. Go and marry yourself? I don't care. The young girl became even more furious when she heard her father's words and angrily threw the porcelain bottle in her hand. The middle-aged man's heart tightened, and with a leap, he caught Jing Tailon, who was about to hit the ground, and let out a long sigh of relief. Thank goodness. Seeing this, the young girl stamped her feet and ran over to grab another painting, wanting to tear it apart. The middle-aged man shouted, Don't, let's talk it out. That's Northern Song's Fan Quan's snowy forest. It wasn't easy for Daddy to get it back from someone. At the same time, he was filled with regret. What was wrong with my brain just now? Why did I meet this girl in the study? Fine, take a look first. If I'm not satisfied, I'll tear this painting right away. Do you believe me? The young girl angrily pretended to tear it apart. This pair of father and daughter were naturally Pucha Ot and Pucha Chiozao. Seeing his daughter's actions, Pucha Ot broke out in a cold sweat and hurriedly said, F***CK. You know Daddy is a man of his word. Now that the king of Zhao has passed away and Wanyan Kong has died in a foreign land, the king of Zhao's faction has declined. If I were to cancel the engagement now, what would outsiders think of us? They would think that the Pucha family are all snobs, trying to claim marriage when the king of Zhao's faction was at its peak. Now that they have declined, if we were to cancel the engagement, we would be criticized by others. Pucha Xiao Cao looked hesitant, but quickly raised her head and said, I don't care. This is your problem. I won't marry a cripple. Pucha hurriedly waved his hands. F***, listen to me. I've seen that Yangwa before. Although he's missing an arm, he's definitely a handsome man, and his martial arts are very high. I heard that he's famous in the Central Plains. Humph. No matter how handsome he is, he's still a cripple. If his martial arts were really that high, he wouldn't have had an arm chopped off. The young girl couldn't help but snort. Humph. I heard that there's another reason why he lost an arm, but I'm not too sure about the specifics. Pucha furrowed his brows and fell into deep thought. Humph. If you still can't find a reason to submit to me, I'm going to start tearing it. Pucha Autumn Grass picked up the scroll again and pretended to tear it apart. Wait. An idea flashed through Pucha's mind, and he hurriedly said, How about this? Today is your coming-of-age banquet, and Daddy has invited all the reputable people in the capital. Yangwa will be here tonight as well. How about this? When the time comes, you can sneak a peek at him. If you really aren't satisfied, Daddy will throw away this old face and help you break off the engagement. What do you say? That's more like it. The girl snorted and finally put down Fan Quan's famous painting in her hand. She thought to herself, when the time comes, even if the man surnamed Yang is earth-shattering handsome, my father and I will not be satisfied. I don't believe that a man with a broken arm really has the charm to make me fall in love with him at first sight. Of course, Song Qingshu did not know that a girl was raising flags for herself. At this moment, he was looking at his nominal wife with a smile on his face, causing Goodbye to pout coquettishly. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm curious about what you said just now. Are you really not angry? Song Qingshu chuckled. Of course I'm angry. Goodbye deliberately put on an angry look, but she quickly giggled, revealing her pearly white teeth. But even though I'm angry, I'm not stupid. That girl Zhong Jie clearly wants to use me as a weapon, so why would I jump into the trap she has set for me? A strange look appeared on Song Qingshu's face. I didn't expect Madam to be so intelligent. Are you beating around the bush and calling me stupid? Goodbye bit her lip and glared at him fiercely. Of course not. It's a sincere compliment. Song Qingshu laughed. Humph, you pass. Goodbye's eyebrows suddenly furrowed. But why does that girl Zhong Jie specifically target you? Did you offend her at some point? Song Qingshu looked gloomy. I was also wondering. I've never seen her before. He knew that it was bad when he blurted it out. Fortunately, Goodbye was thinking about the problem and did not hear any flaws. Did you bully her mother? Goodbye suddenly looked at Song Qingshu suspiciously. She is an orphan and a widowed mother. She has suffered a lot over the years. She heard a lot of dirty men have ideas about her mother. This girl hates this kind of thing the most. How is that possible? Song Qingshu was speechless. He did not expect Goodbye's imagination to be so strange. He had only heard about Zhong Jie's mother, but he had never seen her. It's really not possible. Goodbye was just joking. She trusted her husband quite a lot in this regard. Forget it. Let's not think about it. Maybe it's just that Zhong Jie is in a bad mood today. Song Qingshu nodded, but Zhong Jie's lively eyes kept appearing in his mind. He had definitely seen this eye somewhere before, but where? Right, I almost forgot to ask about that Hua Kuei. Is she very beautiful? Goodbye suddenly looked at him with a faint smile. She is indeed very beautiful. Noticing Goodbye's expression change slightly, Song Qingshu hurriedly added, but she is still far from Madam. You only know how to make me happy. Goodbye knew that her husband was saying nice things, but she still could not help but be very happy. What's more, an assassin came and saved that Hua Kuei. Nothing happened between me and her. Song Qingshu secretly added in his heart. Although nothing happened between him and her, a lot of things happened with the Empress. Then are you injured? Hearing that they had met an assassin, Goodbye's expression finally changed. She hurriedly pulled him over and looked him up and down. I'm not injured. Didn't you personally experience it last night? Song Qingshu suddenly said with an ambiguous expression. Goodbye cried out in surprise. Her cheeks suddenly became as red as peach blossoms. Last night, He was as strong as a bull and tirelessly plowed the fields. He did not look injured at all. As the two of them were flirting, a servant suddenly came to report that the Prince of Hailing, Wan Yin Liang's messenger, was requesting an audience. Why is he looking for you? For some reason, Gubai subconsciously disliked Wan Yin Liang. I don't know. Song Qing-shu shook his head and asked the servant to let the messenger in. Only then did he know that Wan Yin Liang had invited him to the Fu to talk to him because of what happened last night. Wan Yin Liang can't possibly still remember the promise to let me pick any of the concubines in the Fu, right? Song Qing-shu immediately had a strange expression on his face. Of course, he knew that the other person's goal was Gubai, but right now, he was in the dark while the other person was in the light. He had absolute confidence that he would make the other person go for wool and come home shorn. I'll go with you. Just as Song Qing-shu was deep in thought, Gubai suddenly spoke. Chapter 805. What are you going to do? Song Qing-shu frowned. He wasn't worried that Gubai would ruin his plans, but he didn't want Gubai to come into contact with Wan Yin Liang. That perverted devil was famous in history, and he obviously had improper thoughts about Gubai. Although Song Qing-shu was confident that he could protect Gubai, it was still a man's instinct to not let his woman face any danger. After all, he saved my husband's life during our trip to Kaifeng. We had planned to pay him a visit when you got better, but unfortunately, we had a conflict and the matter was left unsettled. Now it's time to pay him a visit. Otherwise, it would be too rude, Gubai replied gently. Although she didn't like Wan Yin Liang, she cared more about the reputation of the aristocratic family. Her husband's career had not been smooth these years, and because of her, he had offended too many people. Now, there was no need to offend the king of Hailing. If she could take the opportunity to build a good relationship with him, it might help her husband's future career. Gubai's words were reasonable, so Song Qing-shu had no reason to refuse. In addition, he didn't want to find all kinds of reasons to reject her generosity when they arrived at the king's mansion. After taking Gubai with him, Wan Yin Liang wouldn't give him another woman, right? Song Qing-shu was not a saint. If Wan Yin Liang had bad intentions, he didn't mind letting him go for wool and come home shorn. If it was any other time, he would have accepted it. But if he fought 2 battles in a row last night and then went to the king's mansion to fool around, even an iron rod would be ground into a needle. The two discussed what they needed to pay attention to later, and then set off for the king's mansion with the gifts. The mansions of the Jin Kingdom's high officials and nobles were all concentrated in a certain area. Although the Tranquil mansion was a few streets away from the king's mansion, that was because the houses were too densely distributed. When they were about to reach the Prince of Hailing's palace, they saw Wan Yin Liang waiting at the gate through the carriage window. Song Qing-shu looked into the distance and saw an elegant young woman standing next to him. Judging from her clothes, she should be the Prince of Hailing's concubine, Danjing. Song Qing-shu had heard Mrs. Tang talk about this Princess Hailing before. She said that she and Wan Yin Liang colluded to trap Mrs. Tang. He had thought that this Princess Hailing should be the kind of person who was scheming and had high cheekbones. But now that he saw that she had such a simple and elegant temperament, he couldn't help but feel strange. You can't judge a book by its cover. Women with a heart as vicious as a scorpion often have a harmless appearance. Song Qing-shu secretly warned himself not to be fooled by this woman's elegant appearance. In the past, Song Qing-shu found it strange that Mrs. Tang, who came from the Tranquil family, one of the 3 great aristocratic families of the Jin Kingdom, could only endure being bullied by Wan Yin Liang. But after spending some time in the capital, he finally understood the mystery. Although the Tranquil family was still one of the 3 great aristocratic families in name, it had long been declining. One of the main reasons was that Tranquil, the head of the family, had married Song Bai, the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom. This had aroused the anger of all the men in the aristocratic circle. Intentionally or unintentionally, they excluded him. Tranquil was not the kind of person who was good at currying favor, so his career had not improved. Because of him, the other branches of the Tranquil family were also struggling in the officialdom. Because of this, the other branches of the Tranquil family were also quite dissatisfied with Tranquil as the head of the family. Although the Tranquil family had not completely fallen apart, there were still undercurrents of discord. With her family in such a situation, it was no wonder that Mrs. Tang was isolated and helpless. When Tranquil went south to Kaifeng, Wan Yinping had used her connections to give him a chance to gain merit for his future promotion. Who would have thought that he would die in a foreign land? As Song Qing-shu was sighing, he smelled an elegant fragrance. Song Bai's soft body leaned towards him and said, "My husband, the Prince of Hailing, is now far more powerful than us, but he is acting so friendly." The Han people have a saying, "Those who are unaccountably solicitous are hiding evil intentions." "My husband, you must be careful." "Yes, I will be careful." Song Qing-shu sighed inwardly. Tang Quobian's beautiful wife was really smart. In fact, he knew very well why Wan Yinliang was so friendly towards him. He was afraid that Song Bai was behind all this, but there was no need to tell Song Bai about this, lest she become more annoyed. "What a rare guest. Princess, Brother Tranquil, I have been waiting for you for a long time." After the two of them got off the carriage, Wan Yinliang greeted them warmly. "Greetings, Brother Hailing, Sister Wang." Song Bai smiled sweetly, lifted her skirt, and bowed. Get up, get up. We are family. There is no need to be so polite." Wan Yinliang hurriedly stretched out his hand to help her up, but Song Bai was one step ahead of him and straightened up, causing his hands to miss. Wan Yinliang's expression didn't change, and he naturally put his hands down. There was not a trace of intention, but Song Qing-shu looked on coldly and knew what he was thinking. "Brother Wang saved our family's Wogu LA's life in Kaifeng City. We, husband and wife, should have come to thank you for saving our life, but Wogu La has yet to recover from his heavy injuries. We hope that Brother Wang will forgive us." Song Bai gave a look, and a servant brought over a gift that had been prepared. In order to show their sincerity, she didn't ask for the help of the servant. Instead, she and Song Qing-shu personally brought the gift to Wan Yinliang and his wife. "Song Bai, you are too polite. We are family, and Tranquil is my brother-in-law. How can I not give him a gift?" Wan Yinliang said with a smile as he reached out to take the gift from her. Song Bai was slightly surprised. According to etiquette, Princess Hailing should be the one to take the gift from her. If he took it directly, it would be inappropriate for a man and a woman to touch each other. However, the two of them were close, so it was not wrong for him to take it. Song Qing-shu frowned and was about to help Song Bai out, but he found that after Song Bai handed the gift to Wan Yinliang, she withdrew her snow-white hand skillfully. She didn't give Wan Yinliang any chance to take advantage of her. Song Qing-shu quickly reacted. As the most beautiful woman in the Jin Kingdom, Gubai must have had many lascivious men around her in her early years. She was very good at dealing with these methods of taking advantage of others, which was why Wan Yinliang, who was an experienced driver, had been defeated several times. However, Gubai was smart. She didn't get taken advantage of, but she had to get back at him. Song Qing-shu had an idea and imitated her. He gave the gift in his hand to Princess Hailing and said, "This is a small token of my appreciation. I hope Princess will not refuse it." His fingers almost touched her chest. Princess Hailing subconsciously took half a step back. She looked at Song Qing-shu and saw that his eyes were clear. It didn't seem like he was doing it on purpose, so she didn't take it too seriously. A faint smile flashed across her fair and beautiful face. "Husband, you are too polite." Chapter 806. Tu Danjing did not expect that the other party would flirt with her in front of her husband. Just as she was about to reprimand him, a hot stream of air suddenly came from her fingertips. That stream of air was very strange. As soon as her fingertips felt it, it instantly disappeared into her limbs and bones. At that moment, she almost moaned in comfort. Fortunately, her good upbringing as a princess made her purse her lips in time. However, the strange feeling in her body became stronger and stronger. It was as if her whole body was soaked in hot water, and there was a pair of invisible hands caressing her body. Soon, she shyly noticed that the saliva between her legs was wet and sticky. Her usually delicate face blushed as if she had applied a layer of powder. "I'm really sorry. I accidentally touched Princess." Song Qing lowered his voice and said quickly. At the same time, he calmly withdrew his hand. "No, it's okay." When Song Qing's hand left her hand, Tu Danjing even felt a faint sense of loss, but she quickly recovered and carefully looked at Song Qing's eyes. She couldn't see any awkwardness or nastiness in them at all. She couldn't help but wonder, did he really accidentally touch me? Recalling the feeling of the heavenly thunder and fire, Tu Danjing's heart palpitated. Could it be that what those people said was true? It turned out that in the circle of the noble women in the capital, this group of princesses often chatted in private. Occasionally, they would talk about the pleasures of the bedroom. Someone once said that if they met their destined person, as long as they touched skin to skin, every inch of the woman's skin would emit a call from the soul, longing to be in the other party's embrace. Could it be that this Tang Kuobian is my destined man? Tu Danjing was in a trance. Her husband, Wan Yinliang, had never given her such a feeling. "Look at my memory. Why are you still standing at the door? Please come in. I have already prepared a banquet." Wan Yinliang's voice finally woke Tu Danjing from her trance. Tu Danjing, how can a dignified princess like you have such a ridiculous idea?" A trace of anger flashed across Tu Danjing's face. She turned and walked into the residence. In the end, she did not know whether Song Qing did it intentionally or not, but he stepped forward and blocked her path. She could not stop in time, and her whole body fell into his arms. Her full breast pressed against Song Qing's arm, outlining a very attractive curve. Song Qing discreetly took a step back and respectfully bowed. "Princess, please." Because Song Qing had deliberately used his body to block Wan Yinliang's line of sight, he didn't see what had happened. When he heard movement over here, he subconsciously turned around and asked, "Jinger, what happened?" Tu Danjing raised her head and stared at the man in front of her. If he said that he did not do it on purpose, even a 3-year-old child would not believe it. However, when she thought of that heart-palpitating feeling just now, she did not know why she did not tell her husband the truth. She subconsciously tucked her hair behind her ear and calmly replied, "Nothing." Then, she quickly walked to her husband's side, as if she would be in danger if she stayed any longer. Looking at Tu Danjing's somewhat flustered figure, a faint smile appeared on Song Qing's lips. When he recalled the amazing elasticity that came from his arm, he could not help but be amazed. Her body is so delicate, but her breasts are so full. This is the best. Just now, when he was giving her gifts, he touched her fingers and took the opportunity to inject the joyful true qi that he had cultivated for a long time into her body. The joyful Zen technique was a dual cultivation technique. The true qi that was cultivated naturally had a strong effect of stimulating lust. Usually, Song Qing took pity on his own women and rarely used it on them. However, for Wan Yinliang's woman, he was not so polite. Just now, it was just a small test. Song Qing had only used a small amount of joyful, true qi. If he really had no scruples, he could have made Tu Danjing go limp on the spot. He understood that going too far was as bad as not going far enough. Thus, he only left a seed in her heart, waiting for it to sprout in the future and completely arouse the lust in her body. Because of the small incident at the gate, Tu Danjing had been distracted. Wan Yinliang could see that his wife was behaving strangely. In addition, he had something to discuss with Tang Kuo in private, so they quickly ended the banquet. Then, Wan Yinliang asked his wife to take goodbye for a walk in the garden of the mansion. Song Qing was originally a little worried. After all, Wan Yinliang's reputation was well known. Who knew what kind of tricks he would play? However, seeing that the garden was within sight, even if something happened, he would be able to save her in time. He secretly gave goodbye a warning look and let the two women wander around. There was a large man-made lake in the Prince of Hailing's mansion. The entire garden was built around this lake. Song Qing followed Wan Yinliang to a pavilion on a bridge in the middle of the lake and sat down. Looking down at the waterside pavilions in the garden, a look of surprise appeared on his face. Noticing his expression, Wan Yinliang smiled and said, "Brother Tang Kwa, what do you think of my garden? In the bitter cold of the north, it has created the charm of Jiangnan. It is simply uncanny workmanship." Song Qing sighed sincerely. Wan Yinliang sighed and said, "No matter how uncanny the workmanship is, it can't compare to the scenery of Jiangnan. Brother Tang Kwa, do you know what my greatest wish is?" Song Qing had a strange expression on his face. Of course, he knew Wan Yinliang's wish. The three greatest wishes of the most licentious emperor in history were all too famous. First, he wanted to be the commander of the army and punish the emperor. Second, he wanted to be the wife of the most beautiful woman in the world. Third, he wanted to be the wife of the most beautiful woman in the world. This was the wish of every man. If it weren't for the fact that the two of them had different goals, Song Qing would have grabbed Wan Yinliang's hand excitedly and shouted, "My soulmate." Of course, Song Qing couldn't say Wan Yinliang's heroic words now. He looked around and saw a poem inscribed on the pillar of the pavilion. Suddenly, he had an idea. When the chariots are mixed together, how can there be other territories in Jiangnan? Raising troops on the West Lake, riding horses on the first peak of Mount Wu. What a good poem. Your Highness's greatest wish is to lead troops to conquer the Southern Song dynasty? The first sentence of the poem, "When the chariots are mixed together," came from Qin Shi Huang's words after he unified the 6 states. But what kind of person was Qin Shi Huang? Just from this sentence, Song Qing could see that Wan Yinliang was not a loyal subject. However, it wouldn't do Song Qing any good to reveal this, so he pretended not to understand the hidden meaning of the poem. Brother Tang Kwa is indeed my soulmate. My greatest wish is to follow in the footsteps of the martyrs and conquer the land of the Song dynasty. Wan Yinliang was secretly shocked. When he saw that Song Qing didn't see anything wrong with the poem, he let out a sigh of relief. He was too careless. After he left, he had to find someone to scrape off this poem. Otherwise, it would bring him trouble sooner or later. Unwilling to continue on this topic, Wan Yinliang suddenly had an idea. He smiled at Song Qing and said, "Brother Tang Kwa, do you still remember my promise last time? Today, I've walked around the prince's mansion. If there's anyone you like, just tell me." Chapter 807. The smile on Wan Yinliang's face froze. He had planned to give Tang Quobian 1 or 2 concubines so that Tang Quobian would owe him a favor. In the future, he would have a chance to drive a wedge between Tang Quobian and Tang Quobian. Who knew that Tang Quobian would choose Tu Danjing? There were many concubines in the Prince Hailing Palace, so Wan Yinliang wouldn't feel any heartache if he were to sacrifice 1 or 2. But Tu Danjing was different. Not to mention that Tu Danjing had the support of the Tu Danjing family. Even if she didn't, she was still his wife. Although he was a womanizer, he still liked this elegant and quiet wife of his. How would he give her away? Since Tang Quobian doesn't know what's good for him, don't blame me for being cruel. A murderous look flashed in Wan Yinliang's eyes. But at this time, Song Qingshu smiled and said, "Although there is no lack of beautiful women in the prince's palace, in front of the princess' unique and elegant temperament, all of them are too gaudy. To have such a good wife, your highness is truly fortunate." Seeing that Tang Quobian didn't mention anything about sleeping with Wan Yinliang couldn't help but frown. He didn't know what Tang Quobian meant, so he answered, "Brother Tang Kwa, you are deliberately showing off. You married the most beautiful woman in the Jin kingdom. Many men in the capital are envious of you." Song Qingshu suddenly looked at him thoughtfully and said, "I wonder if your highness is one of them." Wan Yinliang's smile froze. Fortunately, he was quick-witted and quickly came back to his senses. He said, "I'm also a man. Of course I am envious. But goodbye is my sister. Otherwise, I would have competed with Brother Tang Kwa." "Your highness, you must be joking. The Jin kingdom doesn't have as many rules as the Song kingdom. As long as they are not biological siblings, it doesn't matter." Wan Yinliang was stunned. Song Qingshu changed the topic. "Your highness, you invited us here today. I don't think it's just a simple banquet. Wan Yin Liang was surprised. What did Tang Quobian mean? Why did he imply that it didn't matter if they were not biological siblings? Could it be? Thinking of Tang Quobian's undisguised praise and affection for Tu Danjing, Wan Yinliang's heart suddenly beat wildly. Could it be that he wanted to exchange their wives for fun? This kind of drama was widely spread among the nobles in the capital, but it was not something that could be shown in public. Wan Yinliang had also heard of it, but with his status, he had many ways to play with other people's wives. Why would he need to sacrifice his own wife? But it was different this time. Gubai was the emperor's younger sister, and there were many methods that could not be used on her in the past. Moreover, Gubai was the most beautiful woman in the Jin kingdom. As long as he could get her, it was not unacceptable to pay a small price. Wan Yinliang raised his head and looked at the two girls in the garden. He did not know what Gubai and Tu Danjing were talking about, but all of a sudden, they started laughing hysterically. Their bell-like laughter was accompanied by the breeze, causing Wan Yinliang's heart to race. At that moment, he felt as though he could smell the fragrance of the other party's body. Prince! Song Qing-shu took in Wan Yinliang's expression, hinting that he had already given it to him. If the other party really made such a shameless request, Song Qing-shu would let him know what it meant to suffer a double loss. Hearing Song Qing-shu shout, Wan Yinliang finally came back to his senses. In his heart, although beauty was important, his career was equally important. Thus, his eyes quickly became clear. Wan Yinliang, instead of answering Song Qing-shu's question, he asked another question. Brother Tang Qua, what do you think of the current situation in the imperial court? The situation in the imperial court? Song Qing-shu did not know what Tang Qua was referring to, so he organized his words and replied, a few years ago, the Mongols on the grasslands rebelled. The imperial court did not pay much attention to them because they wanted to attack the southern Song dynasty. In the end, they were attacked by the Mongols and lost a large part of their territory. But now, the emperor is wise, the minister and the two prime ministers are experienced and prudent, and there are young and promising generals in the army. After many years of recuperation, the national strength of the Jin kingdom has gradually recovered and recovered most of its strength before he could finish. Wan Yinliang stretched out his hand and interrupted, Brother Tang Qua, I treat you as one of my own. Why do you have to use such cliches to brush me off? My opinion is exactly the opposite of yours. Wan Yinliang clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the distant northern sky. With a serious expression, he said, although the Jin kingdom has been working hard these past few years and has regained much of its strength, the Mongols have conquered one country after another. Now, they are the strongest in the world. Fortunately, the Mongolians are currently focusing their attention on the West. That's why the countries in the Central Plains have the upper hand when we fight against them. But once the Mongolians finish conquering the West and move their main force to the Central Plains, that will be the start of the real disaster. Looking at Wan Yinliang's back, Song Qing-shu laughed coldly in his heart. If someone who did not know the truth saw him like this, he might really think that he was a loyal and righteous man who cared about the country and its people. However, Song Qing-shu quickly came to a realization. Although Wan Yinliang was shameless and lecherous, it didn't mean that he didn't want his country to become strong and even unify the world. Therefore, the Jin kingdom must become more powerful before the Mongols finish conquering the West. Suddenly, Wan Yinliang's expression darkened. Unfortunately, the imperial court seems to be thriving, but in reality, it is already in danger. What do you mean? Song Qing-shu knew that Wan Yinliang was trying to frighten him, but he still played along and pretended to be shocked. Let's take what you just said, for example. You said that His Majesty is wise and powerful. Wan Yinliang paused, a look of disapproval appearing on his face, but he quickly concealed it. That is true, but His Majesty is addicted to alcohol, and his health has been deteriorating in recent years. He is also easily angered and often kills his ministers. This is not a good sign. Song Qing-shu's expression changed. Your Highness, are you saying that His Majesty is on the verge of death? He was not a Jin citizen, and he came from the future, so he did not have much respect for the emperor. Wang Yinliang was also surprised by his directness. He hesitated for a moment, but did not continue the conversation. Instead, he changed the topic and said, of the three great families in the capital, the Tranquil family is the weakest. Brother Tranquil, what do you think about this? Is he going to use the carrot and stick method? Song Qingshu sneered inwardly, but pretended to be distressed. It's not just the weakest. This year, many people in the family are dissatisfied with me as the family head. I don't even know how much longer I can be the family head. Wang Yinliang was overjoyed. It's good that you know, so I won't have to waste my breath. Brother Tranquil, do you have any plans for the current situation? Wang Yinliang asked casually. Song Qingshu suddenly stood up and bowed. Please enlighten me, Your Highness. Brother Tranquil, what are you doing? Wang Yinliang hurriedly helped him up, a pleased look in his eyes. You and I are sworn brothers. There is no need to be so courteous. Fine, I'll tell you something from the bottom of my heart. If I offend you in any way, I hope Brother Tranquil will forgive me. I wouldn't dare. Song Qingshu thought to himself. What is Wang Yinliang trying to do? I consider Brother Tranquil one of my own, so I'll tell you the truth. However, I hope that you won't let anyone else know about this. Wang Yinliang paused, then added, not even goodbye. Even the song by can't do it. Song Qingshu exclaimed. Wang Yinliang nodded. Brother Tranquil is a hero of the world. I'm sure you've long since realized who caused your current predicament. Looking at Song Qingshu's gloomy face, Wang Yinliang continued. There's a saying in ancient times, femme fatale. Actually, it's full of wisdom. Goodbye is the most beautiful woman in the Jin Empire. If you marry her, you'll make countless enemies. Song Qingshu opened his mouth and deliberately revealed a bitter smile. If I can win Goodbye's favor, this is nothing. I've always admired the deep love between you and your husband. Wang Yinliang changed the topic. However, Brother Tranquil, a man can't live without power for a single day. I'm sure you've experienced the hardships of life. Are you willing to spend the rest of your life hiding in a bed of roses? This. Song Qingshu hesitated. Seeing that Tranquil's expression had softened, Wang Yinliang quickly added, even if Brother Tranquil is willing to live an ordinary life, I'm afraid it's impossible for you to spend the rest of your life with Goodbye. What do you mean? Song Qingshu was also very curious about what Wang Yinliang could do. Brother Tranquil, do you still remember the courtesan of the fragrant autumn brothel? Seeing Song Qingshu nod, Wang Yinliang continued. She was also a member of the royal family and married Kai Jing's son. In terms of status in marriage, she was comparable to Goodbye. But what happened in the end? Her husband was incapable and couldn't protect his wife. He could only watch as his wife became another man's plaything. Brother Tranquil, aren't you the least bit wary? Song Qingshu sneered inwardly. You're the one who's been eyeing Goodbye the most, but you're still pretending to be a saint. Then what should I do? Song Qingshu cooperated and asked, what should I do? Let go of your love affairs and work hard to gain more power. In this world, power is the only thing you can rely on, Wang Yinliang said in a low voice. Song Qingshu hesitated. How do I gain more power? Wang Yinliang smiled, but didn't answer. He picked up his teacup, leaned back in his chair, and slowly sipped his tea. Song Qingshu knew that Wang Yinliang was playing hard to get. His heart was as calm as still water, but his face was anxious. Your Highness, please teach me. Why should I teach you? Wang Yinliang said calmly. Song Qingshu knew that Wang Yinliang was doing this on purpose, so he pretended to choke. Wang Yinliang smiled and said, Brother Tranquil, even though you and I call each other one of our own now, we both know that we've never been on the same side. Furthermore, there are many things that we've said that are meant to hurt one's feelings, so how could I dare to say them to you? Chapter 808. Dare I ask, Wang Ye, how can we truly become one of our own? Song Qingshu's lips curled up, finally revealing his fox's tail. I need Brother Tranquil to prove your loyalty to me, Wang Yinliang said with an indescribable tone. I wonder if your Highness wants to prove his loyalty. Song Qing-shu sneered inwardly. Wan Yinliang smiled and didn't answer. He stood up and looked toward the garden. Song Qing-shu followed his gaze and saw Ge by talking to Princess hailing with a smile. His face immediately darkened. Seeing that Tang Quobian didn't fly into a rage, Wan Yinliang was delighted. Tang Quobian's reaction meant that there was hope, and one XXXXXXX greater than or equal, less than or equal to $P. Brother Tang Qua, please don't think that I'm lusting after your beauty. It's just that Ge Bai is the younger sister of the current emperor, and the emperor can't hear what I'm saying to you. In order to ensure that the secret doesn't get leaked, I had no choice but to do this. Only by doing this can we ensure that you won't betray us, Wan Yinliang explained with a sincere expression. I'm sorry, but I don't want to board such a ship. Song Qing-shu suddenly stood up and pretended to leave. Wan Yinliang calmly said, Brother Tang Qua, you seem to have a good impression of my princess. As expected, Song Qing-shu paused. What do you mean, prince? Wan Yinliang stood up and walked to Song Qing-shu's side. I know it's hard for you to sacrifice your song for nothing. How about this, to show my sincerity? He paused and then whispered into Song Qing-shu's ear, I can use my princess to exchange for it. In the end, he still made such a death-seeking request. Song Qing-shu was filled with emotion. This one Yinliang really knew how to play. In his previous world, this kind of behavior was not recognized by the secular world. Even saying those two words was a sin. Since you want to die, then I'll let you experience what it means to accompany your wife and then lose your soldiers. Seeing that Tang Quobian had stopped moving, Wan Yinliang calmed down. He knew that Tang Quobian was tempted, but he had to add more fuel to the fire. Tu Danjing may not be as beautiful as Ge Bai, but she is still a famous beauty in the capital. Furthermore, she is my princess. In terms of status, you will not be at a disadvantage. Song Qing-shu followed his gaze. Tu Danjing was delicate and elegant. She also had the grace and nobility of a Wang Fei. She really was a top-quality woman. But Ge Bai might not be willing. Song Qing-shu swallowed his saliva and purposely made his voice hoarse, as if he had made a difficult decision. At the same time, he was laughing coldly in his heart. Of course, he would not sacrifice the Song Bai, but he was very interested in making Wan Yinliang pay for his wife. It's done. Wan Yinliang was overjoyed. He hurriedly said, Brother Tang Qua, you don't know this. You could have not told her. Once it's done, only you and I will know. Isn't that better? Then, you won't have to deal with the aftermath, and you won't have to face her questions with guilt. I won't disturb you in your wife's normal life. You can continue living like before. How can this be done? Song Qing-shu was surprised. He really didn't know. Wan Yinliang smiled strangely. He moved closer to him and whispered, There are many ways, but using medicine is the simplest. However, if you want to pursue excitement and don't want to use medicine, there are other ways. For example, let her stay in a dark room with both of us standing outside the door. Then, after you have a conversation with her, I will enter the room. She won't be able to see my face in the dark, and because she has just spoken to you, she will subconsciously think that I am you. The rest will follow naturally. Song Qing-shu was speechless. If this Wan Yinliang was in his previous life, he would definitely be admired by many. Even Edison Chun and Teacher Li would probably be ranked below him. I think the latter method is more exciting. Song Qing-shu smiled strangely. Since you want to play, let's play it big and make you regret it. Right, I think so too. Wan Yinliang chuckled. Suddenly, he realized that he had lost some of his dignity as a prince. He hurriedly wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth and said seriously, This matter is not very honorable. When the time comes, only you and I will know. If the women find out, I'm afraid it won't be easy to clean up. Of course, Song Qing-shu knew that he was speaking the truth. Ge Bai was a princess and a younger sister of the current emperor. Tu Danjing was the precious daughter of the Tu Dan family's previous leader. She was now a noble princess. No matter which side caused trouble, it would be a very troublesome matter. Wan Yinliang came over and put his arm around his shoulder. He said affectionately, Since we have reached an agreement, we can be considered one family from now on. Although there are many important things that I can't tell you now, I can let you know about other things. Song Qingshu had always been very curious about Wang Yinliang's plans. That was why he had feigned civility with him. Hearing this, he couldn't help but perk up his ears. Brother Tranquil, His Majesty's health is getting worse and worse. If I may say something disrespectful, no one knows what will happen tomorrow. Wang Yinliang chuckled. Brother Tranquil, when you went to Kaifeng last time, you probably wanted to earn some merit. Song Qingshu nodded and smiled bitterly. Unfortunately, we failed on the verge of success. Guo Jing was rescued, and I was taken captive. Not only did we not earn any merit, but we were also disgraced and disgraced. Wang Yinliang patted his shoulder. Brother Tranquil, you don't need to take it to heart. You don't need such a small merit. Do you know what the greatest merit in the world is? Song Qingshu was confused. What is it? Wang Yinliang leaned over with a mysterious expression and spat out 4 words. The merit of following the dragon. Song Qingshu's expression changed. This Wang Yinliang was indeed scheming something big. But this merit is not so easy to earn, Wang Yinliang continued. Compared to adding flowers to a brocade, everyone in the world values timely help more. Moreover, those in power generally hate people who are easily swayed. So, you must choose the right person early in order to be able to take this great merit. But doesn't His Majesty only have one son, Wei Wang? Song Qingshu asked in confusion. But His Majesty still hasn't officially named Wei Wang Crown Prince, Wang Yinliang said with a faint smile. Besides, Brother Tranquil, have you forgotten that Taizu passed the throne to Taizong? You mean Changsheng Wang? Song Qingshu exclaimed. He pretended to be enlightened, then stared at Wang Yinliang. Which side does your highness stand on? Wang Yinliang laughed. This prince has revealed enough to you today. Let's wait until that matter is settled. Then we can slowly discuss it. Song Qingshu's expression changed slightly. He knew that Wang Yinliang would not release the eagle until he saw the rabbit. Before obtaining the song by, Wang Yinliang would not reveal any more useful information. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.